It's Monday, May 18th. The time is 6:07 p.m. I will first ask for a motion to adopt our agenda with the proposed amendments on civic clerk.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilor McKnight. Is there a second? Thank you, Councilor Bergman. Is there any discussion on that motion? All in favor?
Actually, I'm so sorry. I haven't been on civic clerk in the past few hours. Could somebody please let me know what the amendment is?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. The proposed amendments to it are to remove from the agenda item number 3, a work session regarding the OPC update to council per Car Alnas Rawi. Remove from the deliberative agenda item 7.5, a resolution advancing Indigenous equity, recognition, and community partnership from Councillor Sanchez Parkinson and Schachter per Councillor Sanchez Parkinson.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion on that motion? All right. All in favor then, please say aye.
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 Second by Councilor Bergman. Okay.
Sorry.
All right. Any opposed? That is unanimous. So we have our agenda. The first substantive item on our agenda is a proposed executive session. Do we have a representative here? Yes. Okay. City Attorney Brown, I see you on there. As is our practice, this is labeled as a union negotiation update, but City Attorney Brown, could you provide us some factual context to support our going into executive session?
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, everyone. This is a proposed executive session for the council to receive an update from the city bargaining team about the status of bargaining the successor contract with our AFSCME union employees. And because this contract is not finalized yet, bargaining is still ongoing, it would be premature to discuss this publicly, so that is a valid basis for an executive session pursuant to the open meeting law.
Thank you, City Attorney Brown. Councilor McKnight, could I turn to you for the first of 2 motions on the executive session?
Yep, I move to make a specific finding that premature general public knowledge of the status of the city's labor negotiations would clearly place the city at a substantial disadvantage.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion? Thank you, Councilor Bergman. Any discussion? All in favor then, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Or any opposed? That's unanimous. Now, Councilor McKnight, could I turn to you for the second motion?
Based upon that finding, I move to enter executive session pursuant to 1 VSA 313A1B to discuss the status of bargaining a successor labor relations agreement with AFSCME Local 1343 and to include in attendance the city's bargaining team and staff from the mayor's office, the Human Resources Department, the Department of Finance and Administration, and the city attorney's office.
Thank you. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Bergman. Any discussion? All in favor then, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are any opposed? That is unanimous. The council is now in executive session. We have public forum warned for a time certain of 6:30 p.m., and we will plan on being back before then. Thank you. I know that some councilors are returning here to the table, but we'll go ahead and introduce and open up public forum here. The time is 6:37 p.m., and we will open public forum now. Under our rules, we will hear first from Burlington residents here in City Hall. We'll then turn online to Burlington residents who are online. We then come back here to City Hall and repeat that process for any non-Burlington residents who signed up, and then we turn online to non-Burlington residents. If you're here in person, when I call your name, please come here to the table, pull the microphone close. There's a push button on the microphone where when you hit it, the green light on the mic itself illuminates. If you're online, I'll let you know once you've been promoted on Zoom and are able to speak. Every speaker, whether here in person or online, will be given 2 minutes. I ask that speakers please address their comments to me as the chair and not to any other individuals. Yes, Councillor Grant?
I wish to recuse myself from public forum.
All right. I ask that speakers please direct their comments to me as the chair and not to any other individual. Under our rules, we do not tolerate any individualized attacks to folks here at the table. It's important that City Hall remain a safe place for those who serve, those in attendance, and those tuning in. So we certainly do not tolerate any comments that are discriminatory, harassing, or based on any other individual's protected characteristics. We also ask that comments please refrain from vulgarities or obscenities or being overly loud or disruptive. If I interrupt a speaker at any point in time, it will be to ask that they please proceed in accordance with these rules. If someone continues to violate the rules as I've described them, I reserve the right at that point in time to end public comment for that speaker. So with that, as mentioned, we begin with Burlington residents who are here in City Hall. The first Burlington resident that we have is Representative Troy Hedrick, who will be followed by Brooke Fleischman.
Thank you, President Travers. Councilors, before you hear public testimony tonight, I want to encourage you to become deliberate about something that can sometimes be a little difficult. It is still for me. And that's the process of decolonizing our minds as we consider this decision. You will hear comments tonight suggesting that the voices of the Abenaki First Nations at Odanak and Wallanack should somehow matter less because they are quote unquote Canadian. But that framing itself reflects the colonial mindset we are obligated to interrogate and to interrupt. There are not, I've said this before, Canadian Abenaki. There are not Vermont Abenaki. There are only Abenaki. The borders imposed across Indakina, the Abenaki homeland that spans what we now call Vermont, Quebec, and beyond, do not erase Indigenous sovereignty or identity. And Vermont's state recognition process did not and cannot create sovereign Indigenous nations. The groups recognized by Vermont statute are not sovereign First Nations. Odanak and Wallanack are sovereign Abenaki First Nations, and they were excluded entirely from the state processes that purported to determine Indigenous identity and representation in this state. That exclusion matters because tonight you are not simply deciding whether to place a statue, you are deciding whose voices this city believes should be centered when interpreting the history of this land and the legacy of Chief Greylock. And as you listen tonight, I ask you to pay very close attention when you hear from direct descendants of Chief Greylock himself. That voice matters perhaps the most. We should have the humility to listen carefully when descendants of the very people we claim to honor ask us to reconsider how we proceed. This land was Indakina long before it was Burlington. The original caretakers of this land still exist at Odanak. Their voices still matter, and they must be centered in the decisions that affect their identity, their representation, and their cultural history. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Hedrick. Our next speaker will be Brooke Fleischman, to be followed by Guy McGuire.
My name is Brooke Fleischman. I live at 375 North Avenue here in Burlington. I'm here to speak against the installation of the statue that one of the Vermont state-recognized tribes seeks to donate to the city. I am not Indigenous myself. I work as the statewide Sea Coordinator based at the Intervale Center, and so I'm deeply interested in the land that I work on, the native seeds that I work with, and of course the people who originally occupied and cared for this land. They are still here. I would urge the council to listen to the voices of Indigenous leaders from the Abenaki Nation of Odanak. They have been left out of conversations like these in Vermont for way too long. As a citizen of Burlington, I agree that the city should collaborate more with Abenaki artists for their work to be shown in public spaces, but please let it be made by true Abenaki people and not the self-proclaimed groups that we have in Vermont. If the council let this statue be installed in Battery Park, it would show how uninformed and uncommitted the Vermont leaders are to repairing the relationships to the Abenaki Nation of Odanak that still call this land home. It does not take much effort to see the truth here. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Guy McGuire, who will be followed by David Massell.
Hi everyone, my name is Guy McGuire and I'm a resident of Burlington. Chi Chalagi Ayetli. I'm an enrolled citizen of the Cherokee Nation. And I'm here today to ask you to please vote no on accepting this statue. For most of my life, I generally wouldn't tell people that I'm Cherokee because I get one of two responses. Yeah, I'm Cherokee too. My Cherokee, great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmother was in like hiding. Or I get the, yeah, you're like a white guy, you're not actually Cherokee. So I learned to kind of keep it to myself. That was until a couple of years ago when I became aware of the issue of the controversy around Abenaki identity. And I started to question my own family stories, what my dad had told me. And I went on a period of discovery, and I learned a couple things which I think are relevant to this discussion, which is that first, Most Americans don't really know much about issues like tribal sovereignty, tribal belonging, indigenous history, the history of federal Indian law. And the other thing I learned is that most of what we do know is based on racist caricatures, mostly from like Hollywood, this stories about Thanksgiving, and we oftentimes act at a place that we think we know, but we don't. And when doing that, we actually cause more harm than good, even if our intentions are good. The other thing I learned that is it's okay to ask questions. When I tell people I'm Cherokee, other Cherokee people say, great, who are your people? Who are you like related to? This is not racism, it's not oppression, it's simply asking who you are and how we're like related. And so I've encouraged you to take this opportunity to ask questions. And I would take this opportunity to like listen to the actual descendants of Chief Greylock, whose unceded land we are on today, who are here today, who are here and able to speak. And this is a gift that I would encourage you to accept and not the statue. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is David Massell, to be followed by Ann Tewksbury Fry.
My name is Dave Massell, Ward 6 resident and professor of history at UVM. I helped organize the public forums on Indigenous identity at UVM that brought this challenging issue to a larger public. I've spent the last 5 years interrogating the historical record on this issue with colleagues and students. This is what I know to be grounded in evidence and true. If you vote yes to accept the REIB's recommendation, you are voting to erect a public monument in a college town that commemorates and celebrates a modern, invented tribe, one of 4 in our state, none of which was ever required to demonstrate Abenaki ancestry before being validated as such by our legislature. You would be endorsing bad state law, bolstering the claims of white people with unfounded claims to Abenaki identity, and worst of all, from my perspective as a teacher, you would be actively misinforming the Burlington public about Vermont's history. You would also be doing so over the strenuous objections of our region's Indigenous people, the Abenaki, and so engaging in an anti-Indigenous act that violates at least 4 articles of the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. They are the Abenaki, not Canadian Abenaki, no such thing. They predate modern colonial borders by several thousand years. Calling them Canadian is to adopt nativist rhetoric, demonizing Native people as foreigners, to exclude them from decisions that affect them in their homeland. For 250 years, colonization has meant democratic institutions backing settler claims in Indian country, whether claims of land or precious metal. What settlers want now is identity. With a vote to erect the statue, you're backing those claims, and if you do so, that is what colonization looks like in 2026 in the purportedly enlightened city of Burlington, Vermont. Please think carefully about the consequences of your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Ann Tewksbury Fry, who will be followed by Sky Mandel.
Good evening, everybody.
Could you make, if you could pull the microphone closer, it needs to be.
Sure. Thank you.
Perfect.
I'm Ann Tewksbury Fry. I've been here before to speak with you. I'm a resident of Burlington, and I am president of the board of a small nonprofit in Burlington that's been going for 38 years. We call ourselves JUMP, Joint Urban Ministry Project. And last week, I heard the mayor speak and saying that the cuts that you all made to the city budget for 2027 were designed to take a minimum, as much of a minimum impact as possible. I come to you today to speak to you, to ask you to make the maximum impact that you can by supporting JUMP. Last year, you awarded us $1,500 for the year. I'm here to ask you for another $1,500 to support what we do. $1,500 means a cost to the city of $4 a day. $1,500 means that you can help us to complete what we did in 2025, which was to serve 1,700 households, 2,000 individuals from cradle to grave. There are no requirements to come to Jump. If you need help, it's a safe place to come. In 2025, we distributed 135 services, include $135,000 worth of services, including food, utility assistance, bus patches, gas vouchers, all of those things to help people to get a lift up. We're on target to distribute at least $147,000 more this year. We ask that you help support families and children to give them a leg up. At Jump, we're not standing by, we're standing up. We can't do enough, but we can do something. So please join us and help us lift our neighbors up at $4 a day. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Sky Mandel, who will be followed by Richard Whitting.
Yesterday, I graduated from UVM with degrees in environmental studies and critical race and ethnic studies. I spent the last 4 years studying issues of Indigenous sovereignty, land rights, and history, examining the various ways that colonialism shows up in culture, law, rewritten history, and institutional violence. I've spent time in and outside of class learning from professors, working with citizens of Odanak and Wolanak First Nations, the true living descendants of the Abenaki, and have visited Odanak and other Indigenous communities abroad to learn the impacts of ongoing colonial legacies. Because of this academic background, I understand how the proposed statue highlighting the so-called Vermont Abenaki is a form of erasure that threatens the sovereignty of the true Abenaki people. This should bother you as city councilors of a university town. It's a source of pride that Burlington is home to UVM, a top-tier R1 research institution, and Champlain College. I would imagine that the city would consider it important to value the knowledge produced in Burlington, the knowledge of its academic residents and senior professors, to value historical accuracy and integrity. Instead, some very loud and prominent individuals in the community have been empowered to exert social and political influence to overshadow the expertise of historians and faculty with extensive credentials on topics of Native history, relations, and struggles. Burlington institutions give land acknowledgements, then devalue the voices of the Native people they reference, instead prioritizing self-identified people not recognized by those groups. This violates First Nations' sole sovereign right to claim those relations, to recognize the identity and citizenship of their own people. Until these rights are respected, these acknowledgements are clearly performative. Furthermore, what message does the city send to current and prospective students by allowing stories that clearly contrast genealogical and historical evidence to negate the work of faculty and students at the institutions, and by propping up factual and historical inaccuracies front and center in its parks? It says that the research conducted at UVM and Champlain doesn't matter. It won't have any bearing on the real issues facing Vermont and beyond. As a Burlington student, this is discouraging, and I imagine that this is not the narrative that the City Council of a university city wants to project. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Richard Whitting, who will be followed by Abby Massell.
Hello. My name is Richard Whitting. I'm a near lifelong Burlington resident and historian who has studied Vermont's Native past and the eugenics movement in our state. Like many Vermonters, I grew up believing that the groups who call themselves the Vermont Abenaki were what they claimed to be, people of Abenaki and Native descent. It was a shock when I learned that the evidence does not support this. This is not just my opinion. The Vermont Attorney General reviewed this issue, as did the Indigenous-led Bureau of Indian Affairs. Both found that the evidence to support their claims was completely absent. The history of how we got here is not simple, however. Members of this group do have deep roots in Vermont, though the evidence tells a different story. Largely of French-Canadian heritage, many of their forebears were impoverished, marginalized, and discriminated against. But there's no evidence that happened because they were Indigenous. In the 1970s, this group began claiming to be Native. Through that identity, they found cultural pride and received much-needed resources. Many well-meaning liberal Vermonters stepped in to help, believing they were doing the right thing by standing with what they understood to be a Native community, while at the same time addressing outcomes from real harm done to these families, if for different reasons. These efforts came from a good place, even though we got it wrong. Good intention, however, is not the same as historical truth. When we put up public monuments, we have to get the history right. Right now, the city does not know enough to make the right decision. You may be thinking, as a non-Native person, it is not my place to decide who is or is not Abenaki. But as a non-Native person, it is absolutely my responsibility and yours to learn before making decisions about Native people and Native representations, and to listen when Native people speak. The Abenaki nations of Odanak and Wolanak are speaking. Are we hearing them?
Thank you. Our next speaker is Abby Massell, who will be followed by Laura Massell.
My name is Abby, and I grew up and live here in Burlington. I urge you to vote no on accepting this replacement statue. By now, you have been made aware that the process by which groups, including Missisquoi, were recognized by the Vermont legislature as Abenaki was deeply flawed and purposefully excluded the region's Abenaki First Nations. I admit, when I first heard about this several years ago, my first thought was, who was I, as a white Vermonter, to decide who was and who was not Abenaki? Wasn't indigeneity, like gender or sexuality, something that could be self-identified? But as I read from Indigenous scholars on this topic and learned from Abenaki citizens of Odanak about their history and their experiences during and since state recognition, I came to understand that we are in this deeply uncomfortable situation today because the state of Vermont chose to decide who was Abenaki back in 2011 and 12, and in doing so, violated Indigenous sovereignty. This statue that supposedly depicts an Abenaki person was realized by a group that Abenaki First Nations unequivocally state do not share any evidence-based kinship with Abenaki people. How could we possibly allow this statue to be placed in one of our city parks knowing that context? As long as Burlington keeps deferring to these self-identified groups and the Vermont Commission on Native American Affairs, we prop up a false and dangerous rewriting of our region's history and present. Accepting this statute would continue the state's tradition of shutting out Indigenous voices because they are politically inconvenient. Interrupt that tradition. Be curious about what Abenaki First Nations of Odanak and Wolanak have shared with us. Burlington can be a leader in making decisions based on evidence. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Laura Massell, who will be followed by Miranda Post.
Hi, my name is Laura. Thanks for having us. I had a long sheet of comments, which I almost don't have to say because most of them have been said already. I want to endorse that. But I also want to bring up something that occurred to me when I went to the REIB meeting and heard the discussion of this question. A word, momentum, is what came to my mind as I was listening to this. Was the board going to move along this process because so much had already been done? The statute was made, the commitment was made, the money has been exchanged. There's a lot of tacit and explicit action made so far. And in reflecting, a comment that I will pull from my previous comment was, in midstream, the Vermont legislature changed the criteria required for state recognition. They removed, for expedience sake, the requirement that genealogical connection be documented, that other facets like family lore and other stories and connections, which there's nothing wrong with doing that when you're doing it at an individual level, but at the state sovereign level, there is an issue. So my worry and my concern is that the Burlington Council is considering a certain momentum and expediency if they were to consider accepting this statue of public art because it's in motion. And I urge you to be brave and just say, we have new evidence. We have information now that wasn't available, wasn't linked, connected, and readily accessible for people. So please consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Miranda Post, who will be followed by David Cawley.
Hello, my name is Miranda Post. I'm a homeowner on North Street in Burlington, and I work in Burlington as well. I do not support the placement of this Missisquoi statue in Burlington. I assume that you want to do the right thing to honor Indigenous people who lived here, who were removed by colonial violence. You understand already why that's important. And of course, you're thinking, I'm in the uncomfortable position to decide who's Abenaki or not. Who am I to make that decision? The good news is you don't have to just decide. The research has been done. The Indigenous voices have been heard. You only need to believe the research and to listen. When the Vermont State Legislature recognized these groups in 2011 and 2012, they made a deeply harmful mistake that was likely made in good faith, but they ignored the evidence then. The body of evidence proving that it was a mistake has only grown since then, and I don't want to make that mistake again today in Burlington. I also wanted to touch on the statue itself, which I hope you've all seen, depicts a ridiculous cartoonish stereotype of a Native person. This is an image that the Missisquoi group has no right to claim or reclaim because they were never targeted or harmed by this imagery. So what we have is a group of white Vermonters who have attached themselves to Abenaki identity, who have commissioned a white sculptor to create a ridiculous stereotypical image of a Native person. And then we have the largely white city of Burlington, who will potentially validate and codify this statue. And then we pat ourselves on the back for honoring the Abenaki people while we've excluded the Abenaki of the Odanak and Wallanack the entire time. That's a really embarrassing and shameful situation for us to be in as Vermonters and Burlingtonians, and I would feel really ashamed to make that mistake again and see the statue placed in Burlington. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is David Cawley, who will be followed by Milo Grant.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Dave Cawley. I'm a resident of Ward 1, and I'm here to bring something to your attention that may be timely because it's relevant to the Burlington-Winooski Bridge project, and I know there's a site visit coming up this week. A couple weeks ago, I went to an open house that was put on by Vermont Transit to talk about, show the progress on the design of the bridge. At that presentation, I learned that there's a feature that was dropped, and it wasn't something that was publicly announced. When the bridge was originally designed, there was a lot of public feedback about not mixing pedestrians and bicyclists. And due to the constraints of the width of the bridge, the downstream side, which is the west side of the bridge design, is a 15-foot lane that will accommodate 2 lanes of bicyclists and 1 lane of pedestrians. But the upstream side, which is the east side, only has 12 feet, and that only accommodates 1 lane for bikes and 1 lane for pedestrians. So the design was to compromise that situation, was to be able to put a bike path underneath the bridge that would direct northbound cyclists over to the Riverside path and travel on the multi-use path on that west side. So that was a good safety feature, and it was proposed if feasible. Well, I found out that the design was dropped because Redstone, which owns the property where some of the bike path would have to go, has concerns for their property. And I think this was a mistake, particularly in light of the fact that the public was very concerned about not mixing or trying to reduce as much as possible the interaction of cyclists and pedestrians. So on your site visit this week, take a look, ask some questions. I think it's important that we learn more about this potential decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Milo Grant, who will be followed by Morgan Lamphere.
Hello, my name is Mila Grant. Live in Ward 2, represent Central Districts Wards 2 and 3. I continue to come here and speak at public forum because I continue to be targeted with political violence, and I continue to have people talk to me, be it walking up to me when I'm shopping for groceries, sending me direct messages on social media, or just insulting me on social media. And maybe next time I'll just read some of the insults that come my way. But I wanted to continue to say, with regards to my experience, it includes, I wish I had kept track of the hours, hundreds of hours working with the community, hundreds of hours reviewing the consultant's report with CNA and what they had done, having pushback from the former mayor and the former police chief, having to actually fight with them to do the right thing, having to fight for CSL positions, having to fight for CSO's positions, having to fight for the CARES team, which we've lost because we should have stood it up and fired, knowing full well that at that time, the Burlington Police Department wouldn't be able to give it the best start that it needed. Also on the Police Commission, there was an excellent mental health summit, which we proposed and which was led by Lacey Smith, that gave us tremendous amounts of information with regards to how siloed our agencies were with regards to dealing with mental health issues. Expanding the Public Safety Committee was my idea. I wanted 4 counselors. I wanted to remove politics from community safety discussions. I wanted those discussions grounded in fact, backed by data, provided by the agencies and teams that provide law enforcement, EMS services, and services across our community safety spectrum. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Morgan Lamphere, who will be followed by Tyler Pasterok.
My name is Morgan Lamphere. I'm a resident of Burlington, citizen of the Abenaki Nation of Missisquoi and Indakana, resident in the state of Vermont, and a citizen of the United States of America. My family has lived here since before Vermont existed and has never left. To suggest that all the Abenakis have historically disappeared and could only be valid through outside lenses would be ludicrous and damaging when applied to any other racial equity, ethnic, or minority group. This sounds like native colonialism. Colonialism, it seems, isn't going anywhere, but is being employed to spread misinformation, to attempt to expand resources for capital gain. We have proven who we are to our tribes, our communities, state and federal organizations through ancestry, genealogy, history, archaeology, and public records. The state law protects our state recognition. We are a sovereign nation in the United States. They are a sovereign nation in Canada. After 400 years of segregated tribal lives, we do the best with how colonialism has impacted all of us. We do not dictate to them or attack them 150 miles away in their area, but to take advantage of the compassionate nature of Vermonters and the institutions they work for, which unites our communities, and to tear us down publicly is shameful, tragic, and is comparable to hate speech as well as being outright misinformation. We know who we are. We know who they are. You know who we are. You know who they are. We are Missisquoi. We are at Vermont Abenaki. Vote to allow the approval of 7.4 and the erection of the statue. Thank you.
Thank you. Our last Burlington resident here at City Hall is Tyler Pasterok. We'll then turn to Burlington residents online. The first Burlington resident we have online is Brittany Helzer. I will note, to the extent I can share my timer online, I see folks continue to want to promote me as a panelist, but it keeps going back down again. So I don't know if someone could try again to promote me as a panelist, if we can share the screen, but I'm looking at it now. But It's fine. Okay, there it is. Thank you. Tyler, thanks for your patience. Go ahead.
Yep. Hi, I am a Ward 8 resident, and I steward and teach about land in Burlington that we call Rock Point. I'm here to urge the council to not accept and display the donated statue because direct descendants of Chief Greylock have called the depiction of him offensive and, as I understand it, have not been engaged in the process. This question, of course, relates to the debates that have been mentioned about Abenaki heritage and identity, and I want to recognize how difficult it probably feels for members of this body to navigate that right now. But while the truth of those questions is, of course, relevant here, I think the current question about the statue of Chief Greylock is much simpler than that. There are leaders and members of Odanak Abenaki who are direct descendants of Chief Greylock who are telling us that this statue is offensive. There are not direct descendants of Chief Greylock supporting this display. If one objective in displaying a statue of someone is to honor their legacy, it seems pretty plain and simple to me that we are failing to do that and even desecrating his legacy if we ignore the voices of his descendants telling us that it is offensive. With the information and voices present, I think that choosing to display this statue would be seriously disrespectful and the antithesis of honoring Chief Greylock and Abenaki heritage. Please don't let momentum lead you to act this way. Thank you.
Thank you. As mentioned, that's our last Burlington resident here in City Hall. We'll now turn to Burlington residents who are signed up online. I should have mentioned this earlier, but this evening, once we get to our deliberative agenda, we do also have a public hearing warned for the Waterfront TIF substantial change requests. So if you are here for that public hearing, we'll certainly provide you that opportunity when we get to it. We have 3 Burlington residents who signed up in advance for public hearing online. They are Brittany Helzer, Sharon Busher, and Evan Gould. Brittany and Evan, I do not see anyone by that name on our Zoom participant list. If you're here under a different name, if you could please use the raise hand function. Otherwise, if we could go ahead and promote Sharon Busher, I think we'll start with Sharon and then see if Brittany or Evan join. Sharon, I just need to share my screen here, and then you should be able to go ahead as soon as you see the timer.
Yes, I can see it. Thank you so much,
Great.
President Travers. I'm going to speak about seniors and youth. So these are comments regarding the budget. The first has to do with the Heinenberg Senior Center, which has been in existence for a long time, but has now is the sole senior center in the city of Burlington with the closure of CORE. And their request is, because they now serve more people, to get $38,000 more for their budget in order to expand meal hours through, and include Friday, and just meet the needs of trying to accommodate all these new seniors who want their services. And so I hope that there will be an opportunity to find those dollars and support them. The second item has to do with the library, and that was, I learned this during the budget presentations, that the youth librarian is going to go from full-time to part-time. So that seemed okay until I read what the library would experience, and there'd be a reduction in youth programming, including after-school activities, and reduced capacity to support children. To me, that is really significant. So this community needs to support young and old, and everyone in between. And I feel that the budget is complex, and the mayor and her administration has done an excellent job, but I point these 2 items out because I think these are populations that are going to not benefit if the budget doesn't accommodate dealing with youth services and expanding funds for the Heinenberg Senior Center. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Again, the other 2 Burlington residents we had signed up online were Brittany Helzer and Evan Gould. Again, I do not see those names on our attendee list, but if you're under a different name, if you could please use the raise hand function. If they are not here, then we're going to return here to City Hall to non-Burlington residents. All right, and that's what we will do. So our first non-Burlington resident here in City Hall is Zachary Bennett, who will be followed by Margaret Cabeco.
Hello, I'm speaking on the Abenaki statue. My name is Zachary Bennett. I'm an assistant professor of history at Norwich University, and I have published on Wabanaki history. 2026, it's the 250th anniversary of independence. It's also the 300th anniversary of Greylock's War, or something called Dummer's War, which is what this proposed statue intends to honor. Kind of an open question. How many of you knew that? I'm a history teacher, and you didn't sign up for a pop quiz. If you don't know about Greylock or Dummer's War, which happened in the 1720s, which is probably the most important Indian war in the history of this region, then it should give you serious pause about approving this statue. In 2 minutes, a lot has already been covered, and I'm not going to presume to persuade you on this Vermont Abenaki controversy, but I will point your attention to this. Think of other monument issues in this country. Confederate monuments in the South, the cannons from the Spanish-American War that flank our State House in Montpelier. In all these situations, we can acknowledge that commemorating those events in that way, at best, was not a good idea and even embarrassing. As a professional historian on this issue, which is New England's colonial history and Indigenous history, I would advise similar caution. Honoring Indigenous people is an important and good thing, but it's also very important for us to listen to Indigenous people. And the opposition of so many people who are indisputably descendants of Greylock should make this committee's decision, I think, an easy one. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Margaret Cabeco, who will be followed by Denise Watso. Is Margaret Cabeco here? We'll come back to Margaret. Could we turn to Denise Watso? And then that will be followed by Chana Kota.
I'm almost tall enough to just stand. Oh, Maggie's back.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. Right on time.
Ganalkshish Hati Adi. This is how I say thank you for being here and listening to my words as I speak them. My name is Margaret Cabeco. I am a citizen of the federally recognized tribe, Sitka Tribe of Alaska, and a proud Tlingit woman. I'm here to ask you to vote no on 7.4. I moved to Vermont 3 years ago from Sitka and began working as a lecturer in the education department at UVM. I am now a library director. What I love about Vermont is that Vermonters love to learn, Vermonters love to read, and Vermonters think deeply about ethics and community. The most horrifying part of this whole situation, the misrecognition of those calling themselves Vermont Abenaki, for me, has been learning that people who are not Indigenous have received Indigenous human remains. This is a human rights violation, and Vermonters are learning this. I have watched public opinion shift. Your constituents are not where they were 5 years ago, and they are asking difficult questions now. Look, I get it, Indigenous cultures are beautiful, our stories are beautiful, but our culture is not a costume for people who are searching for meaning. Our stories and our culture are how we survived colonization. Our stories are not separate from our survival. Our stories are our survival. To allocate further funding to this group is to participate in the erasure of Indigenous people here and everywhere. I know this situation is uncomfortable, I know it is complicated, but it is not too late to course correct. If you vote yes tonight, you are participating in the erasure of Indigenous peoples everywhere. Ganakchish for listening.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Denise Watso, who will be followed by Chana Kota.
Kwai Inzui. My name is Denise Watso, and I am a citizen of the Abenaki Nation of Odanak. Kwai members of the Burlington City Council and residents of Burlington, Ole One, for the opportunity to speak this evening. I stand before you today urging this council to vote no on accepting the donated statue from the 501c3 group calling itself the Abenaki Nation of Missisquoi Sokoki. Let me be clear today, this group does not represent the legitimate Abenaki nations. The federally recognized Abenaki Nation of Odanak and Wolanak have repeatedly raised serious concerns about the false identity claims of the Vermont state-recognized groups. Extensive research by genealogists, historians, demographers, and investigative journalists have shown that the vast majority of individuals in these groups cannot document Abenaki ancestry. Their claims undermine our sovereignty, our identity, and our right as Indigenous people to define our own citizenship and nationhood. This is simply not a disagreement between two communities. We are Abenaki, they are not. Greylock was a respected Abenaki leader who defended his people and homeland with courage and dignity. Many of his descendants are citizens of Odanak today and live in the capital region. To honor Greylock while ignoring his living descendants and excluding the legitimate Abenaki nations from this process is disrespectful. A public monument is not neutral. It tells the public whose voices matter and whose identities are recognized. This proposed statue is offensive to Greylock's descendants. It is also reproduces the stolen logo of the Odanak Abenaki Police Force patch, still worn proudly by officers in our community today. If Burlington accepts this donation, the city will give legitimacy and visibility to organizations whose claims are actively challenged by the very people they claim to represent. Do not legitimize more harm. Vote no, reject this donation, choose truth, accountability, and genuine nation-to-nation respect. Ole One. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Chana Kota, who will be followed by Richard Maynard.
Thank you for the opportunity to address you. My name is Chana Kota. I am here today to ask you to not accept the statue for a variety of reasons. First and foremost, because the descendants of Chief Greylock are asking you not to. This statue is part of a much larger controversy which is causing harm to Indigenous people whose territory is now called Vermont. I sent you all an email last Thursday telling you the story about how I grew up believing the lore that my French-Canadian descendant family told me, that we had Native ancestry. Some of my family members joined the Missisquoi group when it was first formed, and I grew up believing that identity, and it meant a lot to me. But when I began to do the research and the DNA testing, I discovered that the stories were just stories, and we had no Native ancestry at all. Recent scholarship has shown that 80% of French-Canadian settler descendants falsely believe they have Native ancestry when they do not. I do not believe my family lied to me intentionally. I think they genuinely believed it because it was part of our culture to want to have something that provided us with a sense of belonging to this land. I think they were confused and they had been told stories that made them feel special. I know how complex this controversy seems on its surface, but what it boils down to is that the Vermont tribes were denied federal status because they could not meet the requirements. The state then went ahead and created state recognition, which does not confer federal status and requires no burden of proof to join. And that brings us to where we are today, addressing you and asking you to choose what a tribe with proven heritage and federal status is asking you. There will not be many occasions where you'll be asked to choose between what the Vermont groups want and what Odanak wants, but we are asking you to choose what the tribe with federal status is asking now. We're asking you to honor what the descendants of Chief Greylock are asking, which is to not accept this statue, which is a racist caricature with an emblem that has stolen from Odanak on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Richard Maynard, who will be followed by Robert Richard.
Hi, my name is Richard Menard. I live in Missisquoi, Abenaki. First of all, I hear everybody say I'm not Abenaki. I know who I am. Thank you. But the other thing is, years ago, I met Chief Watso. He was a good man. He was carving a totem pole with Chief Homer St. Francis. And I stood by him and talked to him. I asked him, why do they have characters on there? What do they represent? And he said they represent various animals that represent part of their heritage. And I want to thank Chief Watso because he inspired me to carve totem poles. I've carved several of them. And I've got one at UVM, Shelburne Farms, a couple in Swanton. In fact, the pole that Chief Watso had carved for our monument down at Monument Road in Swanton, he carved that, and it was pretty well deteriorated, like the one we had to replace here, because it was pretty rotten for the birds getting in there and eating all the little pests in there. So I had to replace that, which I did. And so I do want to thank, like I say, Chief Watson for inspiring me to do that, because that's part of my heritage as well, even though I'm told I'm not from other people. My relatives come from Canada, and I live in the U.S., and I'm a U.S. resident, so that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Robert Richard, who will be followed by Chief Brenda Gagne.
Good evening. Welcome to Missisquoi Abenaki territory, deemed by the state of Vermont, the only people that can tell us what our recognition is. Nobody in this circle can. It's a state that does. And with that being said, we just got recognized again last month by the state of Vermont. Every state rep, Democrat, Republican, Independent, all stood up except for one. With that being said, the genealogists that the Abenaki used since last time I've talked here, and I told it wasn't right who they were using, has been found guilty by the King's Court in Canada for fraudulent genealogy against another Indian and was fined $77,000. That's who they use for a genealogist. That kind of sets a precedent. And I want to thank the REIB for getting involved in this. Since the 2022 resolution, we had to get their help because we could not get any response from any of the city departments, and they've done a great job. And if things do go sideways, you guys can't blame this one on Montpelier. It's on you. You own it. And nobody ever said that the new totem pole represented Chief Greylock. This is all coming from them. This was a replacement totem pole to represent the Missisquoi Abenaki. And what else? That's about it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is listed here as Chief Brenda Gagne, to be followed by Christian Breivik.
Thank you for the time. The City of Burlington has historically made continued improvements with its relationship with Missisquoi Abenaki through the years. This has showed continuity and consistency, which changed in 2017 to 2018, which it went off the rails. First of all, the state of Vermont has already said who we are as Missisquoi, and they are the ones that have the power to say so. What gives anybody else the right to say anything different? And our citizens need answers. Now here we are, another meeting over the statue that was created with monies that City Council gave us for REIB to work with us. When the last statue was put up in Battery Park, Odanak and Willownack did not have any issues and did not even show up. But now it's an issue. Chief Graylock was from Massachusetts. He came to Missisquoi to lead us in the war. Read the history, it's there. I don't know if they're related to them or not. It's not my issue. But Graylock walked us through and fought with us as Missisquoi. And that battle was started in 1722, when the English were going against us and we made allies with the French. It was called Drummer's War or Graylock War. And he led into Missisquoi territory, or Swanton area, which is both known as Vermont today. To have a few people show up and spread lies about the people is ludicrous, to say the least. There has been a lot of lies spewed about Missisquoi. One of that, Odanak did DNA on us, is completely a lie. They did do a fake genealogy report that they paid $7,000 for some of them to do on us. That didn't even put down who we were. My family isn't even correctly on the genealogy report that they put out. So that is another lie. There's also a statement by the City Council in an open meeting a couple months ago that said the state of Vermont, we're looking into recognition. That is not true, that is a lie. I have more, but I'll wait. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. As always, I know that 2 minutes can be pretty limiting here. Folks are welcome to submit written comments to the council at citycouncil@burlington.gov, so please feel free. Our next speaker is Christian Breivik, who will be followed by Jules Lees.
Good evening. My name is Christian Breivik, and I teach in the Rubenstein School of Environment and Natural Resources up at UVM. This past semester, I co-taught a course called Race and Culture in Natural Resources. As part of that course, I led a 3-week unit on indigeneity in Vermont for a class of some 300 freshmen, where we studied questions of Indigenous identity as they relate to environmental thought in Vermont and beyond. The point I want to raise is that while false claims of indigeneity might seem like a situation unique to Vermont, they are widespread in the United States and Canada, especially when those identity claims are allowed to function as a credential for those supposedly holding Indigenous knowledge. To quote Sisseton Wahpeton Oyate scholar of Indigenous identity Kim Tallbear, these people become thought leaders, institutional decision makers, and policy advisors to governmental leaders with regulatory and economic power over our peoples. They then shape academic and public discourse about who we allegedly are, what our lives allegedly look like, and what they think should be done about and to us. The debate over the statute is happening in this broader context. The temptation for settlers to take on Indigenous identity to legitimize their ideas runs deep in this country, as far back as the Boston Tea Party, and is reflected in popular culture from the movie Avatar, the highest grossing movie of all time, to Dances with Wolves, Dune, Fern Gully, The Last Samurai, Grey Owl, and others. I bring this up to emphasize that there is something about this idea of becoming Indigenous that is deeply appealing to mainstream American society, and that this is not a niche Vermont issue, but a local expression of a much larger pattern. Please consider this wider context in deciding about the statute tonight and in decisions made by this council going forward related to Indigenous people and knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Jules Lees. I will note that including Jules, we have 5 additional speakers in the queue, just for the council and for the public. If you're here for our local control commission meeting warned for 7 p.m., we will turn to that as soon as public forum is concluded. But we have Jules Lees, who will be followed by Brian Wiggins.
Good evening. Thank you for making time to listen. My name is Jules Lees. I'm a former Burlington resident and former Vermont teacher. I also taught the Abenaki language at Middlebury. In these roles, I worked closely with the Vermont state-recognized tribes until I was called to learn more about their history. In considering the Abenaki controversy, there are 2 possible realities, and the harm to Indigenous people in each is quite different. One possible reality is that the state-recognized tribes are Abenaki, as are the communities of Odanak and Wolanak who oppose them. In this reality, the harm is to the Vermont tribes whose identity is being questioned, and my role as a settler is to stay out of it. However, there is another possible reality, and this one supported by the historical and genealogical evidence. In this reality, the members of the state-recognized tribes are not descendants of Vermont's original people, but rather their ancestors, like my ancestors, came on boats across the Atlantic. In this reality, the harm is to the Abenaki, who have suffered not only the taking of their land, but now also their identity. Bodies like the Vermont Commission on Native American Affairs and the Abenaki Nation of Missisquoi are arms of a decades-long anti-Indigenous campaign to rewrite Vermont's history, erasing the actual Indigenous people. Predominantly white settler legislators are then collaborating with white settlers falsely claiming to be Abenaki to consolidate white power in Vermont. In this reality, my role as an Indigenous ally is to hold settlers like myself accountable when they harm Indigenous people. There is no neutral on this issue. To understand what harm is being enacted, we have to learn our history. This is why I urge the councilors to reject the statute and the anti-Indigenous ideology it represents. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Brian Wiggins, and then our last non-Burlington resident here at City Hall is Jeffrey Betvey.
Good evening. My name is Brian Wiggins. I'm a member of Missisquoi Abenaki. I can tell you that my great-grandfather never saw Avatar or Dances with Wolves. There was no agenda for him being Abenaki. He was just Abenaki. There's a lot of misinformation in the air. I agree everyone should get as educated as possible. It's a difficult subject. I think it's clear that people are dug in, and that's for good reason. We've been called a lot of names tonight. That's difficult to take. I hope you can all appreciate where the Vermont tribes are coming from. And I hope you ask yourselves why the change in attitude from north of the border. The current leadership is opposed to us, but they weren't always. So ask yourself why, what changed, and what's at stake. Thank you for your time.
Our last non-Burlington resident here in City Hall, and excuse me if I'm mispronouncing that or misreading this, but I have Jeffrey Betvey. Please correct me if I mispronounced it. We'll then turn online. Our two non-Burlington residents signed up online are Donald Nolet and Corinne Sita. Corinne Sita, I do not see anyone by that name online. If you're under a different name, please use the raise hand function on Zoom. Jeffrey?
My name is Jeff Benet. I had many years ago chaired what was called the Governor's Advisory Commission on Native American Affairs for the state of Vermont. For 15 years, I chaired it under Governor Howard Dean, Jim Douglas. I now have been serving on the Vermont Commission. But here's the thing. I don't feel that I ever wanted to be in a position like this because I'm not Abenaki. I've worked with the Abenaki for many years, for almost 45 years. But I'm hearing things being said, and I have to respond because I was there. And it's got to be said. It really does, before you make certain decisions. You've heard, how basically ODNAC had no input into the process of recognition, that they were completely stonewalled. This is not true. Someone named Skip Bernier, Richard Bernier, an ODNAC Abenaki, approached me. And he said he wanted to talk. We got to know one another, and Skip had input into the process. Not only that, Skip asked that his nephew, Tim DeLabrule, be placed on the newly formed Vermont Commission on Native American Affairs, and he was. So Tim was on the commission. So when you're hearing that, no, that's, there's nothing to be said about that, that just isn't true. It's not true. Odenak was there. To hear that the Vermont Abenaki, just appeared, understand what the folks went through, for a long, long time before recognition came to pass. This was about social justice and equity. These were the poorest of the poor. So what did they do? When we talk about pretend Indians, this is what the Vermont Abenaki and Missisquoi did. In 1980, they were the first to build a Section 8 housing project in the state of Vermont. First. Is that my 2 minutes?
It is your 2 minutes, if you could please wrap up. Yeah.
Okay.
It goes quick.
Yeah, so it's a couple of years later, the Abenaki, there was no public preschools,
Sorry,
kindergartens in Vermont.
just a
The
sentence.
Abenaki started them.
Okay.
So, thanks.
Thank you. We'll turn now to non-Burlington residents online. If we could please promote Donald Nolet. And are we able to promote Donald? Or have we tried?
I am Donald Nolet.
Oh, okay.
An
I see you
Abenaki.
there. Go ahead. Thank you.
I am an Abenaki with family from and in Odenak, Canada. I am a direct descendant of Chief Greylock. The proposed statue is an insult to the true Abenaki and my heritage. I see a cartoon-like face that does not represent the Abenaki. Missisquoi Abenaki is carved in a childlike manner underneath the cartoon face. Chief Greylock and I share the same Native American name, Wawanolep, which translates to he who fools the enemy. The Missisquoi Abenaki have fooled all of us after genealogy being cleared as the Abenaki through lack of genealogical or historical evidence as Abenaki. I am opposed to the placing of the proposed statue anywhere as a representation of my heritage. Please reject this proposed statue. Work with the Odenak and Wodenak First Nations to replace the fallen statue with a tribute worthy of Chief Greylock and our heritage. Thank you.
Thank you. I do not see Corinne Sita online. There were 2 Burlington residents who were signed up online, though, in Brittany Helzer and Evan Gould. And Evan, I see that you joined, so I think we'll go ahead and promote you, Evan, and if you want to participate, go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me? Sorry, I got wrapped up with some work stuff, so I didn't make the piece. I left some written comments about the statue and appreciate Councilor Schachter responding and following up. So I'm not going to say anything more about that. But I did want to, I was appreciative of the permit. It's in the consent or the consent agenda, but the new right-of-way usage on Main Street for the wine bar includes separating out the bike lane, because I think that was a problem when the Griffin applied for theirs. So just wanted to say I was thankful for that, and hopefully more of the permits coming forward will also include kind of surrounding the bike lane and making it more active on Main Street. So that was all. Thank you.
Thank you. I do see, so there were 2 additional folks that signed up online for public forum, in Corinne Sita and Brittany Helzer. I do not see either of them, so I think we will go ahead and close public forum now at 7:43 p.m. I will note that I see some folks that have their hand raised on public forum. It is our rule and practice to require that folks sign up for public forum online at least an hour in advance, and we have called the names of everyone who filled out our form within that time frame. Before resuming our regular council meeting, we will adjourn the council, recess the council at 7:44 p.m. and call to order our meeting as the Local Control Commission, and Commissioner Broderick as chair. Oh, he's not here.
Can I ask a question? We had
Yes.
Can you find him on?
That name did not sign up at least an hour in advance. So I do see some folks had their hand raised, but it is our practice to require that folks have to sign up in advance. So I apologize to Daniel, but that's the standard that we hold everyone to. If Daniel or anyone who's not able to participate has any written comments, would welcome your sending them again to citycouncil at burlingtonvt.gov. And sorry, so now we're on the Local Control Commission, and Commissioner Broderick, could I ask you as chair of our License Committee for a motion on the agenda?
Move to adopt the agenda.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Grant. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are any opposed? That carries unanimously. Commissioner Broderick, could I ask you for a motion on our consent agenda?
Move to adopt the consent agenda and take the actions indicated.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Grant. If there's no discussion, we'll go to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are any opposed? That is unanimous. We have 4 deliberative items. Commissioner Broderick, if I could turn to you for a motion on item 3.1.
Move to approve the 2026-2027 outside consumption permit application for Bar Renee, 202 Main Street.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Grant. If there's no discussion on that item, we'll go to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are any opposed? That's unanimous. Item 3.2, please.
Move to approve the 2026-2027 outside consumption permit application for Preppy Market and Eatery, 50 Lakeside Avenue.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Grant. If there's no discussion on that item, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? That is unanimous. Commissioner Broderick, item 3.3, please.
Move to approve the 2026-2027 outside consumption permit application for the Wise Fool, 260 North Street.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Grant. If there's no discussion on that item, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? That is unanimous. And now item 3.4.
Move to approve the 2026-2027 outside consumption permit application for Wilder Wines, Wine Bar, 210 College Street.
Thank you. Is there a second to that item?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Grant. Any discussion? All in favor, then please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are any opposed? That is unanimous. Seeing no other business before the Local Control Commission, absent objection, we will adjourn that meeting at 7:47 p.m. and resume our City Council meeting at that same time. Item 3 on our agenda as originally posted was a work session regarding the Overdose Prevention Center that has been removed from our agenda and will be rescheduled to a later date, which now takes us to item 5, Mayor, General City Affairs. And Mayor, when you're ready, we'll turn the floor to you.
Thank you, President Travers. I want to provide folks a few updates from the city, and there is a memo accompanying my updates with a lot more detail on things I won't be able to cover in my 10 minutes with you. So first to the Plan BTV 2050 comprehensive planning process that was underway. I spoke to this briefly last time, but we held a really successful open house on April 30th at 1 Main Street. We had over 350 community members attend, which is quite remarkable when you think about planning and a planning conversation for something that's conceptual for the next 25 years of our city. But due to the hard work of our staff, it was interactive, it was participatory, it was available to all ages to interact with, and there was even a prompt that talked about what would you do if you were mayor for the day and designing the city for the next 25 years. What did you want to see? We now move on to engaging community in different ways. The next highly publicly oriented event will be in July, followed up with another one in September. So we're just getting started. If you were not able to participate in the one on April 30th, there's going to be more ways to engage. And currently, our planning department and team is working with our REIB team to do deeper engagement with diverse community members, including specifically utilizing our trusted community voices to make sure that we get feedback from our entire community and we go to them in terms of folks who may not be able to easily get out to an open house. We also went on to celebrate, bring back really since COVID, we had put on hold, a hiatus, our Celebrate Burlington Awards, so organized by our CEDO department. We resurrected those awards and held that event here in this room earlier this month. The awards first launched in 2000 and are a way to celebrate our residents and organizations who continue to make our city a great place to live, work, and play. This year's awardees, and their names will be on a plaque here in City Hall, include Gail Shapnois, who works at UVM and has been a longtime leader on the town-gown relationships in the Ward 1 and 8 area. She received the Herb Blumenthal Award for Community Activism. Nor Nablusi received the Peter Clavell Legacy Award. Peter Clavell is a former mayor here of the city of Burlington. And finally, Sally Adams received the Ken Schatz Award. And all of these 3 awards were established at various years throughout Burlington's history, the last 20 years or so. And I'm so pleased we brought these back because it's important to honor folks who really provide great community contributions here to the city. About a week or so ago, I had the ability, really the privilege, to tour our new Burlington High School. And I really want to emphasize this was a very special moment, and I'm really looking forward to the entire community having an opportunity to walk through this impressive investment in our future and our youth and the future youth of this city. The building is just simply gorgeous and beautiful and inclusive and well-designed and interconnects Arms Forest, which sits on the back of the building, down all the way to the playing fields. And everywhere you look in and out outside the building, it's full of life, it's full of community and convening space. It's so intentionally designed that I think every single Burlingtonian will be proud to say this space is now the place that we will have our high schoolers be able to be educated in, and our educators be able to educate our youth in. Our DPW and other parts of city government are helping the school district do the final touches on things like moving the Green Mountain Transit bus stop to the places where it needs to be. We're starting to consider renaming the road to really celebrate the new moment this signifies for our community. And even though this means absolutely nothing, I can tell when people are really excited about good news when we hit 50,000 views on a mayor post in social media, and for some reason this hit 50,000 posts. There are good things happening here in the city, and this is certainly one of them, and I encourage you to I believe it's August 22nd, will be the community-oriented event that everyone is invited to. So next, our Parks and Public Works Department have been hard at work. I held a meeting earlier today with frontline workers to thank them for their hard work across the city. About 35 employees between those 2 departments did the hard work of our seasonal cleanup around town as we move into the warmer months. This is what we do every year when the snow recedes and we see what has been left behind. 35 employees recently removed 11.7 tons of material from the urban reserve, which is an area down near the bike path on the waterfront. And these results are very notable. And even so, on this other thing that I don't go on called Reddit, we got a rare public appreciation post on Reddit for the city for this work. So again, we can say good things as well in the land of Reddit. But I want to appreciate those 35 employees, those departments. They do this annually, but that is such an incredible coordination across city departments and a big improvement for what is a space that we are very proud of for the Burlington bike path and our waterfront. Also, a dozen employees recently completed a significant cleanup at the Barge Canal area, another big partnership moment, and we'll be partnering with a local contractor this week to address the the shelf off of Battery Park, which is the large sloping hill downward to the waterfront, which has another set of areas that need to be cleaned by the city. This past Saturday, the city held its 41st annual Kids Day, led by our Burlington Parks, Recreation, and Waterfront Department. It was attended by several hundred children and families, and my own children reported happily that it was a good event, so they get the stars, the stars from my family. And at least 350 kids were counted when they were serving the ice cream. These activities included all sorts of wonderful things, games, swag, giveaways, face painting, and an extra gratitude to our partner organizations who were there at the event: Girl Scouts of the Green and White Mountains, the Lund Center, the Parks Foundation of Burlington, and Fletcher Free Library. And a huge thank you to their sponsors of that event locally: Leonardo's Pizza, which is a locally owned company here in Burlington, Market 32 Cares, and they made generous financial sponsorships that made sure that event was able to take place. Over to our airport briefly. You know summer's around the corner when Leahy BTV is able to offer seasonal flights, and those kick off. We have flights to Charleston, and for the very first time, a flight direct to Houston. Those are up and running, and those direct flights now make a total of 19 destinations. Our airport really is an economic regional hub that's able to not only bring people here to Burlington and this region, but Vermonters and regional folks elsewhere in the country. And we're proud of our team for adding those flights. Please mark your calendars. Burlington's annual Juneteenth celebration will be on Saturday, June 20th. The theme for this year's celebration is freedom, yesterday's legacies, today's promise, and tomorrow's hope. This theme honors the history of emancipation, reflects the ongoing struggle for equality, and inspires future generations to continue the fight for justice and inclusion. This is always a great event for the city, and we have multiple departments supporting RIB in pulling this off this year, as we did in the prior year. And in the spirit of this event, we are seeking nominations for the Celebration Awards attached to Juneteenth to recognize individuals, organizations, and businesses whose work helps expand freedom, opportunity, and belonging in our community. So you can find more information on the city's RIB webpage. Please nominate one of those very deserving individuals, organizations, and businesses who help us advance inclusion and equity work here in Burlington. Before I go to a little bit on community engagement, tonight's agenda includes a very big moment for my administration. We will be presenting our fiscal year 27 budget, the administration's budget, the mayor's budget, to the council. This reflects weeks and weeks of incredibly hard work by our finance department within the Department of Finance Administration and our CAO, who of course is not here right now, but I will just give her flowers because this was just incredibly long nights, long weekends, preparing a transparent budget that's not only balanced, but an incredibly fiscally responsible budget that includes strategic investments in what we need as a community, while continuing to bravely right-size the kinds of services that are not critical and core in order to provide a balanced budget to our city that does not spike taxes in a way that makes them unaffordable for folks. So we are very proud of this budget. I appreciate councilors have engaged since January on this work with us, and the public can see every single department presented in detail at various budget hearing nights that have been posted on our city website, and you can learn more when we do the presentation at the end of this agenda you have. Finally, in terms of community engagement, over the past 6 weeks, I've engaged many different community partners, residents, businesses, institutions. I've gone around to quite a few places, including up at the University of Vermont and Burlington School District. I also have participated in regional and national leadership conversations on climate, transportation, and municipal government, including presenting as part of the Climate Mayors Group on a national panel around BED's work to continue moving forward even when the federal government is abandoning funding for critical climate infrastructure work, and also concluding my participation in the Bloomberg-Harvard City Leadership Initiative, where I've served along 46 other mayors from around the world to continue to build our capacity to advance ample, affordable housing in this city. Throughout April and May, I used media appearances, public forums, and press conferences to communicate endlessly about our budget. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you all can give the budget presentation tonight. But I've also spoken to substance use responses and long-term planning initiatives such as the Plan BTV 2050 event. Finally, I've attended a few different events, and if you attended, in particular, the Center City Little League game, which Councilor Sanchez-Parkinson and many others, Councilor Bergman were there. I will do better next year with my pitch. I just want for the record to show I pitched from the mound at the Lake Monsters better than I did at Center City Little League, and I will do better on behalf of the youth. But I also modeled that we can make mistakes and we can try again. My own 6-year-old was there with me. I think he might have thrown a little better than mine. I did. But I just want to highlight that one in particular because it really shows such a wonderful program that has, I don't know, what was it again, 20, 30 years or so, started under Bernie Sanders, actually it would be 40 years then, and it's a great thing that has been continued by a lot of folks in the Old North End and across the city to provide Little League access to kids in the neighborhood, and it was great to join them for their opening night the other night. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. That brings us now to our consent agenda. I will note for the record that Councilor Schachter has informed me that because of a professional conflict of interest that she's recused from item 6.10. Is that correct, Councilor Schachter? Great, thank you. Is there a motion on our consent agenda?
So moved.
Okay. Is there a second? Second. Thank you, Councilor Bergman. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor, then please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Are any opposed? That carries unanimously. I should also note for the record that we're joined by Councillor Newbeezer online. That takes us now to our deliberative agenda. The first item on our deliberative agenda is a public hearing regarding the Burlington Waterfront Tax Increment Financing District. I do believe that it may make sense before opening the public hearing. Director Alice Rawi and David, do you want to present on this item first to the full council, or? I think that might make sense. Okay, I think that makes sense. So if you could present on the item first, just because it may spur comments for the public hearing. Yeah. So if there's no objection to that, I think that we will turn to you first, and then we will turn to the public.
Thank you, Council President. There we go. And okay. Good evening. We're here today because to discuss a substantial change request that we are bringing for our Waterfront TIF district, which includes the City Place project, just to orient people. We are bringing a substantial change request to VEPC, Vermont Economic Progress Council, on this project. We are bringing a collection of changes that have happened over the last few years, including the additions of grant funding, expanded public improvements, amendments to the development agreement, and our final permanent bonding for the project. In order for us to bring a substantial change request to VEPC, we need to first bring it to this legislative body for approval, and then we will present it to them. I am joined today by David White, who is the president of White & Burke and who is our TIF consultant.
Thank you, Cara. So the Vermont Economic Progress Council is responsible for administering the tax increment financing program for the state of Vermont. They approve all TIF districts, and they have to approve any changes in the TIF districts. And under the rules, certain things rise to a level. Minor things don't require going back to them, although you report on those annually, and there are check-in meetings with staff of the council. Larger things rise to a level where you need to go back. And cumulatively, we haven't been in front of them for the Waterfront TIF district since 2023. So in the last 3 years, there have been a series of things that have happened that cause us to need to go back to them at this point. It's important to understand that the Waterfront TIF district, which has a history going back to 1997, most of the district expired at the end of fiscal 25, that's June 30th of 2025, and the only thing left, as Cara alluded to, are the 3 properties that are involved with the so-called City Place, and that includes both the new building that fronts on Bank Street, the white building, that's substantially complete and being occupied, and the one that's under construction that fronts on Cherry that has wings on both Pine and St. Paul Street. It also includes, as so-called Phase 2, the property, the remaining portion of the old mall that fronts on Church Street and the LL Bean building. So it's kind of an L-shaped area there. And there, in the substantial change application that we're taking to VEPC, there's little or nothing that is new to the City Council, because you've seen various things, changes in the agreements with the developer involved with the first 2 buildings, Phase 1, the amendments to the development agreements, you've seen the grant information and so forth. So there's very little that's new for this City Council. And there have certainly been opportunities with each one of those things that have come before the City Council for the public to be aware of it. But the purpose of this particular application is to wrap all those together into this first application since 2023. Let's see. There we go, got it. So very quickly, the Waterfront TIF District, as I said, includes what's now called Burlington Town Center, the south and north buildings, and the Phase 2. The public improvements for the public's benefit, I know the City Council is amply aware of this. The core of this is to reconnect downtown, which was cut off during the urban renewal era by the mall. And so it's the reconnection on Pine Street and St. Paul Street between Cherry and Bank, so that you'll be able to get north-south on those streets that have not been possible to get through for decades. It also includes rebuilding Cherry Street and Bank Street. And the basic concept underlying tax increment financing is that the new taxes that will be generated by these new developments will pay the debt that is incurred to pay for the cost of those improvements. There's just an image of the south building, a little bit of the north building. This is looking up St. Paul Street, the future St. Paul Street. So the changes that we're bringing before the Vermont Economic Progress Council include, there have been 2 major grants the city has received. The city's been very successful with this. This includes $12 million in congressionally directed spending. It was one of the last things that Leahy did before he retired. And also a $22 million what's called RAISE grant from the Federal Highway Administration. And those collectively will help pay for this infrastructure. And they've allowed the infrastructure plan to be expanded to include a somewhat larger geographic area and a more thorough reconstruction with utilities and various other things. Additionally, one of the changes is that the Burlington Town Center designs have changed in detail. The overall images that I showed a moment ago, and there's another one I'll show in a moment, on the exterior haven't changed substantially, but on the interior there have been detailed changes in terms of the number of housing units and various other things. So we're bringing those before them. Also, the affordable housing, which is a key component here, 20% of the units will be affordable. And those units, when we last were in front of the Vermont Economic Progress Council, were being delivered by Champlain Housing Trust. But Champlain Housing Trust is no longer involved. The developer is directly providing those. And one of the terrific aspects of that is that the money that Champlain Housing Trust would have used, public funds it would have used to subsidize those housing units, are freed up for other affordable housing projects. So in effect, it has the benefit of increasing the affordable housing production by freeing that up with the developer using their own funds to be able to underwrite the affordability of the 20% of these units. Then, in addition, we will be giving VEPC the information about the final bond for the tax increment financing bond. The City Council is aware that there have been repeated short-term 1 annual renewals of interim debt. We've now gone just earlier this month to a permanent bond. We'll be providing that information to VEPC along with the information update on the investment earnings that have been made along the way, because those funds have been deposited in a depository account and earning interest for a period of time. So we'll be reporting on those. One of perhaps the only change that may be new to the City Council here, which is not, I don't think, terribly substantial, but we have proposed to increase the what's called related cost budget, and that's the cost of operating the TIF district, the administrative and management costs. And part of that are the costs of audits, for example, and the costs of the state audit, which is obligated not less than every 5 years, have been substantially higher than we anticipated they would be, and we also have had inflation. So we think it's prudent, because this budget has to carry the city through 2036, that it's prudent to give a little bit more cushion than we've had in that budget up till now. We're also informing them of the amendments to the development agreement with the developer. And as you may be aware, there are some legislative changes underway that the city has requested of the legislature we expect will be passed, and we'll be bringing those, informing VEPC about those as well as we go forward. And those are all in the packet of information. You wrap all of that together, and the financial projections show that first, the public improvements budget has increased. That's part of what that we'll be asking them to approve. It's now at about $71 million for the Cherry Street, Pine Street, St. Paul, and Bank Street reconstructions. We estimate that at the end of the life of the TIF district, there'll be about a $4 million surplus. And I should be clear that this does not include Phase 2. Again, that portion which is not yet under construction that faces on Church Street and includes the LL Bean building. And we've not included any new development on that site, not because we don't think it'll happen. We do think it will happen, but we don't know when and we don't know what the value would be. So to be conservative, we have not included that in the estimates. Assuming that does happen, and I think it's highly likely that it'll happen sometime within the next 9 years while the TIF district is still active, that there will be additional surplus beyond that $4 million. So that's the gist of what we will be presenting to VEPSI. The details are in your packet, and happy to answer questions.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before turning to the council on the recommended action before us, we will continue the public hearing. There is one individual who signed up for the public hearing in advance online. If we could please go ahead and promote Sharon Busher. But we will then come here to City Hall as well as online to see if anyone else wishes to participate in the public hearing. If you're here in City Hall, I'll just ask that you please come here to the table. If you are online and wish to participate in the public hearing on this item, please use the raise hand function. Sharon, you've been promoted and should please go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. First of all, I wanted to say that this is the first report that I feel that was written so someone who isn't a financial investor or someone who has that background can understand. So I want to compliment you on giving the history and bringing it all together. I think it's well written and easy to follow. I just felt obligated to say that. You explained how in 2023 there was $39 million, and now because of changes and because of just inflation, it's now $71 million. And then you speak to the fact that you have secured all the funding with the exception of $14 million. And if indeed, and you hope to secure that funding, but if indeed the city doesn't, it will result in a partial restoration of Bank Street. And right now, it's proposed to be 2 blocks of Bank Street, but if it's only partial, you have stated in the report that it will only be 1 block as opposed to 2. And you speak about the Great Streets model that we use on Main Street coming to Bank Street. And I have to be honest, I feel that the sidewalks are beyond what I think was necessary on Main Street, but I don't want to burst anyone's bubble. I'm not trying to be critical. I agree with the mayor that the trees are a wonderful addition. Don't get me wrong. I hope that the improvements work the way they were intended to work for Burlington. But my point is, my making that comment is that rather than doing 1 block, I'm hoping that there will be consideration to accommodate right up until South Winooski Avenue. And the point that I made at the Board of Finance and the point I want to make tonight, even though this is not going to be a debate that goes forward to the legislature, but it will be one that we will have, is I'm hoping that emphasis will be put on the section that goes to South Winooski Avenue, since that's the area that intersects with Church Street, Marketplace. And I think it's so important that we have those amenities there where the guests and the public, and they're very visible and important for businesses also. So I want to thank you. I know that I didn't write down what I also wanted to say. I know in the report, as far as with tax increment financing, you hold back the money from schools in the city and you use those dollars to pay down the debt. But in the proposal, it was 100% of the school portion, and I believe in the report now, you're proposing to make that 75%, so more dollars will be available for schools. And I think for the community, that is something that has bothered members in my section of the city, and I think that they will be happier to hear that. They still aren't satisfied, but they'll be happier to hear that. So I want to thank you all for all the work you've done, and for David White, the other David White, who's been part of the city for a long time. I thank you for your expertise.
Thank you. I'll turn now to City Hall as well as online to see if anyone else wants to participate in this public hearing. Is there anyone else here in City Hall that wishes to participate in this public hearing on the substantial change request? And is there anyone online? If yes, again, please use the raise hand function on Zoom. I'll ask one more time if there's anyone here in person or online that wishes to participate in this public hearing. All right, seeing no one, we will go ahead and close that public hearing then at 8:15 p.m. And now turn to the deliberative item on this issue, which is item 7.2. My assumption is that your presentation is all set. Okay, great. This item comes to us after action before the Board of Finance earlier this evening. Councilor Barlow, as a member of the Board of Finance, could I ask you first for a motion on this item if you're prepared?
Certainly. I would move to approve the city's substantial change request to VEPSI for the Waterfront TIF district and authorize City Council Ben Travers and Chief Administrative Officer Catherine Schad to execute the attached formal request letter.
Thank you, Councilor Barlow. Is there a second? Thank you, Councilor Bergman. Are there any councilors that wish to be recognized on this item? All right, seeing no one, we'll go to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are any opposed? That is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Item 7.3 is the FY27 proposed budget presentation from CSWD. I know that our friends at CSWD are on the circuit right now, going municipality to municipality. So Sarah, thank you for joining us, and happy to turn to you now if you're prepared to present on the item.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, Council President. I appreciate your time. I would like to share my screen if possible.
You should be able to do that.
Okay, let's give this a go. If that's the one you want to share. All right. Are we seeing?
We can see your preview screen. I mean, we could see the presentation, but it's not full screen. It's just. I think if you go to display settings up in your top bar, there's a drop-down menu, and it'll give you the option to swap screens to the presentation.
Let's see here. Sorry about that. I think I've shared. The external display is disconnected. Okay. Apologize for the technical difficulties. All right, let's try this one more time.
There we go.
Okay. Thank you very much for your patience. I appreciate that.
No problem.
And I also want to thank Lee Perry, our commissioner, for being here with us as well. Thanks, Lee. Again, my name is Sarah Reeves. I'm the executive director for our Chittenden Solid Waste District, and we are a municipality chartered in 1987 by the state of Vermont to manage the waste generated within Chittenden County. Burlington is a member of CSWD. I show this slide for folks who may not know who we are and kind of what we're about, but also to emphasize where we do receive our revenue from and where we do not. We do not receive revenue directly from our cities and towns in the form of a line item on your budget from, say, property tax or anything. Our revenue is generated in three main buckets: user fees or tip fees, the sale of materials and products, and a solid waste management fee, which is a tax on trash that haulers pay. And again, we are here to ask you for your vote on our budget for the next fiscal year. And each select board and city council has one vote, and the votes are not weighted by population. So everyone's vote on this particular item counts the same. I am generally asked when I come to talk with you how we're doing as a district. And in the last year, I believe this is for 2025, calendar 2025, we generated as a district in total over 318,000 tons of material. That's everything. Of that, we diverted from the landfill just over 194,000 tons. So of that 124,000 that is left, we want to look at the items that were in that 124,000 tons that went into the landfill. What could be pulled out and further diverted? So you see there that green bar, that's nearly 31,000 tons of food scraps. And so we are focusing quite a lot of our outreach and education material on helping folks to understand how to best reduce the amount of food waste that they make, and then what to do with those food scraps instead of putting them into the trash, because they do make up a significant amount of material in the landfill from the state, and we want to keep that stuff out. I do want to also address head-on an incident you may have heard about in the news. CSWD is building a new materials recycling facility. It's one of the largest infrastructure projects, municipal infrastructure projects in the state. We were just about finished with our draft budget. We have presented to our finance committee, and within about a week or so, we were the victim of a pretty significant phishing scam. We had $3 million in payments that were meant for our construction partner diverted to the fraudster. It was clearly a devastating incident, and it significantly affected our budget, so we had to reconfigure our budget. It continues to be an ongoing and open investigation led by law enforcement, and we are cooperating fully. Our Board of Commissioners is also conducting an internal review of the incident, and they should be wrapping that up within the next few weeks or so. And we're anticipating that there will be recommendations coming out of that report, and we will be happy to share what we learned from that with you all, so you can also take any precautions that you may need to take as well. But we really want you to know that we are not going to be looking to our member municipalities to bear the burden of closing the project funding gap. This did obviously represent $3 million of cash needed for this project. We will likely need to take out a short-term loan to help with that, finishing that project. I think the building is, I'd say it's about 3/4 finished. Excuse me, we will be starting to install the equipment in about the beginning of August. So the project is ongoing. It is not stopping, and we are finding other ways to fill that gap. We did, like I mentioned earlier, take a significant re-examination of our budget. We made quite a few cuts. We've further deferred capital, and we've taken another look at our revenue and expectations. Anything that is conserved, preserved, is going to be directed towards that MRF project, and it is anticipated that the recovery to our reserve funds will take at least 2 fiscal years, possibly 3, but I'm hopeful that on fiscal 30, we'll be back to where we thought we were going to be at the beginning of fiscal 28. This is a very, very busy slide, so I will point you to the top 3 lines and then that bottom line. So the budget is proposing revenue in the amount of $19,255,200. We are projecting expenses in the amount of $16,136,738. The difference will be moved to the MRF project fund to help with that build. And we've been asked, well, where does that leave your reserve funds? And so at the end of fiscal 25, we're projected to have just over $12 million, nearly $12.5 million in our our reserves, our total reserves. At the end of this current fiscal year, we're looking at just over $8 million, and you can see in that undesignated line, the third line from the bottom, that's where we've parked that $3 million fraud loss. The MRF bill drawdown will consume just over $9 million of the reserve funds, and we're looking at being just under $2 million in total reserves at the end of fiscal 27. We're taking from the unrestricted reserves, and we are not touching at all the restricted reserves. So you can see where we're looking at the solid waste management fee fund, operating fund, capital fund, and then that MRF project fund, which goes away when the facility is constructed. This is just a visual representation of where our revenue stems from. Again, tipping fees, which are user fees, so fees that folks pay directly to us to manage materials, whether it's at a drop-off facility or compost facility or recycling facility. The sale of materials, so the sale of the recycling that's been sorted, sale of compost, sale of local color paint, and that solid waste management fee, which again is the tax on trash that is brought to the Coventry landfill, and that tax is paid by haulers. And then the visual representation of our expenses, roughly split almost 50-50 between payroll expenses and materials management. And materials management expenses are the fees that we pay to haulers to move materials either to market or to disposal. And this is for folks who prefer percentages. The change from last year to this year, I'm anticipating about 11% more in revenue. That was after our revamp of our expected revenues. And the expenses are roughly staying level expenses. You can see where we've taken some significant reductions in administrative costs, promotion and education, professional fees like consulting, equipment and fleet, and travel and training budget. We do have some fee changes this year, and these fee changes were all proposed prior to the fraud incident. So these were contained within the budget that our Finance Committee saw previously before the incident. The big one that is new and has been talked about for several years is a new facility use fee for our drop-off centers. And this is being implemented as a way to help our drop-off centers be able to contribute directly to a capital reserve fund to meet their needs. For the last 25 years, the existing materials recycling facility has been contributing all of its revenue in excess of its operational needs to the district's general capital reserve fund. And so when the new MRF is built, it will be utilizing all of its revenue generated for its operational needs, paying its debt service associated with that facility, and for contributing a small amount to its own capital reserve. So each of the other operations had to start to think of ways to build up their own individual capital reserve funds. So we've been talking about this for a couple of years, and early this spring in March, we put out a survey to our drop-off center customers over the course of 3 weeks in March, and we asked them to help us. We said we need to generate $1 somewhere to help with the capital needs for the drop-off centers to make sure that they are sustainable and paying their own way. And so we gave them 4 options. And the 2 options that rose to the top, which were pretty neck and neck, were a facility use fee and adding $1 to every bag of trash. And we landed on the facility use fee. So what that means is that anyone who uses any of our drop-off centers will pay $1. And we did this because we wanted to make sure that we were capturing all users for all materials. There will be some items that are not subject to this $1 fee. So if someone is coming into our drop-off center and all they have, for example, are electronic devices that are covered by the state's electronics extended producer responsibility law, those products will not carry the $1 fee. They will. So if you are only bringing in your bucket of dead batteries, those batteries will not carry that fee because they have an EPR law attached to them. We are also not charging the fee right now on textiles because we want to continue to incentivize folks to bring us their textiles. So if all you have are bags of clean textiles and you want to recycle those, you will not be charged that fee. But otherwise, every trip will carry this gate fee or this facility use fee. We're also this doesn't actually affect Burlington, but we're also going to be implementing a leaf and yard fee. This is new, and it's again to cover the cost of moving that volume of material. Burlingtonians can utilize the leaf drop at the McNeil station. The materials recycling facility, that tip fee has already increased. That took effect on April 1st. The organics recycling facility increase will take effect on July 1. No increase at the household hazardous waste depot. And then that tax on trash will increase from $40 a ton to $41.92 per ton. And again, we do ask our cities and towns to act to approve our district as presented by staff. And I will stop my share and happily answer any questions you may have.
Great. Thank you very much for the thorough presentation. Councillor Barlow, as chair of our TOOC, could I ask you for a motion on this item as well?
You can. I just have to get to the item back off of the presentation here. Okay, I move to approve the Chittenden Solid Waste District's FY 2027 budget as presented by district staff.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Schachter. Councillor Barlow, do you wish to speak to this item at all?
Not quite yet.
Okay. Is there any other councillor with comments or questions? Yes, Councillor Bergman.
I just have a clarification. Did I hear you correctly that the leaf and yard waste drop-off at McNeil will not be charged for, consistent with what we are doing and have done for a really long time?
So the leaf and yard drop at McNeil will continue as is. So there's no change in plans for that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bergman. Is there any other councillor that wishes to be recognized on this item? All right. Then I think we'll go to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Thank you, Sarah, and to your colleagues at CSWD.
Thank you very much for your time. Have a good evening.
Great. So that brings us now to item 7.4, authorization to accept a work of public art from the Abenaki Nation of Missisquoi Tribal Council, Burlington City Arts, and Councillor Sanchez-Parkinson will turn to you as chair of our REIB committee for a motion on the item, and then happy to give you the floor if you'd like, or open the floor to other councillors.
Thank you. I move to approve and authorize the Director of BCA to accept a public art donation as described in Attachment A with a total value of $20,000 from the Missisquoi Abenaki Nation to facilitate the site preparation up to a maximum amount of $25,000 and to execute all necessary documents upon final review and approval by the City Attorney's Office.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion? Second by Councillor Carpenter. And Councillor Sanchez-Parkinson, do you wish for the floor back?
Yes, please.
Okay.
First of all, I just want to say thank you to everyone who's come out here today. I know you've taken time out of your evening, not only today, but for a number of nights now. So thank you for being here. I appreciate your insights, your perspectives that are very important as we make this decision tonight and moving forward. On February 17, 2026, this item was brought to the City Council. At that time, the Council recommended for this agenda item to be further discussed at the Racial Equity, Inclusion and Belonging, the REIB Committee. On April 21st, the REIB Committee delved deeper into this topic, engaging numerous community members and discussing among Council members. By the end, the committee, not unanimously, recommended that the Council approve and authorize the BCA to move forward in accepting the public art from the Missisquoi Abenaki Nation. Today is May 18th, and as a Council, we once again face this decision. I want to acknowledge the work that has gone into this process, not only since February, but for the last couple of years. I also want to acknowledge the context in which we are making this vote. Yes, at hand is a decision of a gift, and that is the focus of my decision-making tonight. But it would be ingenuous to ignore the challenging and ongoing discussions that have surrounded this decision. This includes the revisiting of the 2022 resolution that aim to address past and present injustices and building relationships with the Missisquoi Abenaki, and also the ongoing critiques related to the state's process and tribal state recognitions. It is in this context that we as a council, we must make this vote tonight. However, I want to remind our council that tonight we are not here to take sides on these broader issues. We are here to solely vote on whether BCA has our approval and authorization to accept this gift. In any vote, and especially in one that holds such social implications, as councilors, we must dig deep into our core values, our decision-making principles, and remember why we were elected: to serve, represent, and to make tough decisions. I will briefly note why I will be voting no tonight. Battery Park is part of my neighborhood, one where our children, our seniors, and our community members convene. This public park is also central to visitors who come to enjoy and learn about our city. I believe that any public art or changes to such a park requires deep community engagement that takes into account the diverse experiences of our communities, the feasibility and the sustainability of the project, and the impact that it has on our community. The public art piece at hand, to me, does not fully meet these expectations. I want to be clear, my vote tonight is not to run away from this difficult conversation, but instead to lean in. I would welcome anyone who would be open to further discussing how our community can engage in deeper learning as we move forward towards engaging and supporting our Indigenous communities here in Burlington and across our region. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there any other councillor that wishes to get in the queue on this item? All right, Councillor Carpenter? And then Bergman? Okay. All right, and Broderick.
Thanks. I had a question. Is there a representative from BCA here?
Yes, Colin Storrs is online, and there he is.
Oh,
Yep.
okay. I truly appreciate my colleague Laura with her comments and how difficult a decision it is. This is tough, but I want to make sure that any decision we make does not erase the identity of the Missisquoi tribe. We've been working with them forever, but since 22 for sure. And I think it's important that we just need to acknowledge that they have occupied this land. There's a different set of standards on how that acknowledgement is recognized between the state and the federal governments. That means there are different things for different people. And I think in the context of what we're talking about, that's a learning experience. We can describe the differences. I don't think it is one size fits all. I think we need to honor the people that we know of, that we've worked with, that the state has recognized, and find a way to do that. My question for the action tonight is to give permission to BCA to accept this. And BCA had a process where their public art committee reviewed this and made a recommendation to accept this statute. In their letter of accepting it, they agreed that it was fitting and appropriate to put it in the park, and that it was in the best interests of the city and in their public arts program to accept this. And I guess my question for Colin is any of that changed as your public arts committee changes opinion about this being fitting and appropriate and in the best interests of the city, or putting it in a public place?
The Public Art Committee and both the BCA Board of Advisors, who both reviewed and put forward the application to the next stage in the process, were both given the context of this piece in a wider political conversation, that they don't particularly have the jurisdiction to detail the city's stance on. They were provided the 2022 resolution as a clear guidance to them concerning the ideas of representation, and were instructed to review the piece based on its suitability of the site, safety considerations, and whether it was a fiscally appropriate use of the public art fund to install this work, all of which I think has been no change in, but they were specifically given the guidance to not take this into consideration because that was a conversation that needed to happen above their level.
I guess I'm a little unclear what you mean by that. I mean, their purpose is to review the art and decide if it fits or doesn't fit. Am I right?
Yeah, we gave them the instructions that this piece carries a unusual amount of broader implications if they chose to reject it, or if they would be making if they chose to reject it on the basis of a wider discussion of Missisquoi Abenaki identity, that is not their expertise that they bring to the city review.
Okay. Thank you. And I guess sort of bearing that in mind, I mean, we as a city council also don't carry the expertise to determine which Abenakis are real and which ones are not. And that is the purpose of other bodies like the state of Vermont or the federal government. And that's where we've landed. There are two different designations. They're not necessarily equal by the eyes of others, but they are a designation. And so from my perspective, I'm going to take that for what it's worth. I think if there are folks who want to get rid of the state designation.
Point of order. Councilor Carpenter's been out of time for a substantial amount of time.
She's about 30 seconds over. She's wrapping up. We're
Okay,
going.
It needs to be fair to everyone then.
Okay. Councilor Carpenter?
I can finish, yes.
Okay. You're done?
Yes.
Okay. Councilor Bergman, I'll turn to you next.
Thank you. Let me start by thanking all the people who were here. The testimony is significant, and as my colleagues have said, takes enough time to really mean that I should be appreciating your effort that's here, particularly in this incredibly difficult situation, difficult issue. I have had a connection with the issue of the Abenaki since the hunting and fishing struggle in the mid-1970s, and with the extinguishment of the Aboriginal rights decision by the Vermont Supreme Court. So I've had a chance to look at this this issue for quite a long time. I really appreciate the comment that was made about momentum not being a sufficient reason to do what needs to be done, or to base a decision on. Tyler Pasterok, who I have worked with here, really expressed my feelings much better than I did when he talked about the objections to the statue by Greylock's descendants. I have a very big objection to doing something that is going to harm the legacy of descendants. I would not want my great-great-great-grandchildren to see something, depiction of me that was really offensive, and I can really appreciate that. I was definitely influenced by the objections to the use of, I'll call it a logo, I can't remember exactly what the term is, but the flag from Odenak. I do not think that I am going to try to weigh into the struggle over legitimacy. And I don't actually think that decision is in front of me tonight or us. I am going to vote against the acceptance of this for those two major issues that I raised. I would hope that we could have a process that really did bring the reflections and the input of Odenak here to be able to acknowledge the native people of this land. How that happens is, for another night, and if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But tonight, I am going to vote against the acceptance of this particular gift. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Bergman. Councilor Broderick?
Thank you. I'll be brief. Just I'm voting no, very simply. If the city is going to, in any form, honor Vermont's original native inhabitants, it simply must include those who were expelled from where they originally inhabited. Not doing so is indeed exclusionary and erasure to their stories and their legacy. And I will just second the points that the public and Councilor Bergman made. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Broderick. I do not have any, Councilor Singh, and then Grant.
I do also want to thank everybody that has come to speak to us here tonight. I hear the hurt and, generations speaking to us here, and it's, I just want to thank you for coming. Similar to the comments of my colleagues, I don't think this body is able to wade into and be arbiter of any First Nation or Native people's rights and claims. I think that's really outside of the purview of this body. What I do understand, and I'm trying to understand better, is that the council's role here is basically procedural, and it's defined by the city's gift acceptance policy. And it's gone through the process of the City Arts Public Art Committee, and it's already been recommended that we accepted it. Rather than we revisit that process, I'd really like to know if the council did accept this gift, would the intention of the administration be to display it? We're the ones that would accept it, and would the administration's display it in City Hall Park, or is there any alternative locations that have been thought of?
Is that a question that you're posing?
That's a question. I'm sorry.
Are you, or is anyone from the administration able to weigh in on Councilor Singh's question?
Well, I'm wondering if Colin can first speak to locations, because that was part of BCA's piece, and then I can, Councilor Singh, if you just want to, I was writing something else down. If you want to restate the question for my part, I can let Colin go first and go second.
I understand, we have a procedural obligation under the the gift policy to accept the gift, but then after accepting the gift, is it the desire of the parks or the administration and BCA to display it in City Hall Park, or is there other alternate locations that have been, or Battery Park, excuse me, or any other locations been thought of?
Well, actually, Colin, I'll go first if that's okay, and then you can speak to locations. Per policy, this is a decision by council. So we, when I came in, it's been referenced in the conversation so far around the 2022 resolution and the money allocated by the council at the time for resources to the Missisquoi around, there were not any strings attached to it in that resolution. I think the council has a copy of that. And there is prior work that preleads this administration around perhaps other conversations that were had. But to our best of our knowledge, that when we were presented this gift, we went through the gift process, which puts it to the council for a decision, not the mayor, and not, as Colin was saying, there's an advisory board for BCA, and that is an advisory body. It is, and so as Colin was describing to Councilor Carpenter's point earlier, they went through that process and carefully tried to deliberate on a way to provide guidance to ultimately this decision-making body, which is the City Council. I asked when I became mayor and met with the Missisquoi initially that this obviously is also reason for the REIB to also be involved, to provide their guidance and insight, and that's what led us to, what did you say, Councilor Sanchez-Parkinson, was it February where this was brought back. So that is the role of the administration to provide, in this particular scenario, advice per the policy where the ultimate decision is with the council. Now, if you decide to accept the gift, then BCA would work towards location and siting, and there has been some pre-work, I believe, Colin, on looking at locations, but I'll let you answer that level of detail.
The gift proposal given to us by the Missisquoi Abenaki assigns the previous foundation that was utilized by the Chief Greylock sculpture that was removed in 2024 as the location for the piece. We'll ensure that it's safe to withstand another few decades and install the piece on that site if it's accepted.
So if I'm understanding, if we vote to accept, it'll be displayed somewhere at a choosing of the people that make that decision. I just want to be clear.
If you choose to accept it, it will be displayed on the old foundation in Battery Park.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. Councillor Grant?
Thank you, and I want to also thank everyone who spoke tonight and has emailed, and also some extended conversations that I've had after the REIB vote. I want to thank Councillor Sanchez-Parkinson for her comments, which I agree with. I want to start by saying that when I was the REIB committee director, it was wrong to take this on by the committee. I think at that time we should have voted no, not to accept it. But it was given to the committee, and I think my thinking at the time was that having the committee involved and having the REIB department involved was kind of a better late than never, because we are still at every level in the city trying to get departments to include REIB in these type of relevant conversations so that we are putting our best foot forward with issues, recognizing and taking into consideration these issues of equity and inclusion. My vote on the committee, I should have voted no. I voted yes. It was a very heated meeting. There are perhaps some things that I might have taken personally when we talk about how different peoples in both countries have been separated. That was something that I had to think about. You know, when I think about how far I am from most of my family members, when I think about slurs that have been used against me or insults that have been used against me, and I was really feeling that in the room. It was a lot, and I feel that the best way to move now is that we should not making this determination of identity, but what we should be doing is acknowledging that we're on stolen land. And I think that is something that we should move to do. And I believe that's something that we can do to properly acknowledge the history while reducing the harm. There is, I believe the address would be 311 North Avenue, or in the 300s of North Avenue. Keeslich Park, for those who've not been, there is a poetry walk, and I intentionally went by this weekend. There's some actual work being done, but part of the poetry walk, when that work is done, is a dedication from a Native American artist, and it was like dedicating that land along with the recognition. So as we talk about this, I do recommend that, and I think there might even be a recording of it on the city's website. I should look for that. But I recommend that people listen to that, and that is probably the way to move. I think we also have to think about the plaque that currently remains in Battery Park without the previous statue that was there. Do we want to remove that? Do we want to put a new plaque? What exactly do we want to do there? Those are other questions that we'll have to continue to think about. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. Is there any other councillor that wishes to speak on this item? Yes, Councillor Schechter and Councillor Litwin.
Thank you. I'll keep this brief. I echo a lot of what's been said. And I sort of want to just acknowledge that I've only been on the council a bit over a year, but this whole process feels a bit unusual to me in that this is a very, both there's sort of the logistical, factual, as Colin, thank you for, kind of acknowledging like will the foundation work? How much will it cost? There's these very practical questions associated with this gift. And then there's really complex stories and histories that are interwoven in this gift. And I guess I sort of, it leaves me, this whole experience, with a question of where those conversations can live in a more, so that they're not just kind of bubbling up once this comes to the council at this point in the juncture. I feel like this has been dragging on for a long time. There's been this sort of, I think, really complex and delicate parts of this conversation have not been held in other places in the process. And I don't think that's the fault of any people or bodies, but it's just an acknowledgement that, it feels like the council's having to really sort of step in a way that I'd love to explore, whether it's with the REIB committee moving forward or other ways where we can weave some of REIB's work more into other city departments and conversations when we're dealing with questions like this, so that the delicate parts can be really leaned into and worked through, and that conversations can happen along the way, rather than this feel like it's just been dragged out. Everyone deserves an answer on this statue, and now we find ourselves here. So I just sort of want to acknowledge that this process feels peculiar, and but I am very grateful that REIB has taken it up, that we are taking the moment to dig in. For everybody who's shown up tonight, I want you to know how seriously I'm listening to every single voice and story that's being shared. And I will also be voting no tonight, but it's very much with the door open to continuing all of these conversations. I don't think this is an ending in any way. I think we need to continue to wrestle with how we honor the histories of this land and this place, and the role that we as a city have in doing that. And my vote tonight is just feeling like we haven't yet done the work to not potentially be causing harm in accepting this statue. And I know there's harm caused by not accepting it as well. So it's a very difficult decision. And for me, this is not a door closing, and it's certainly not digging into some of the broader questions, but it's really thinking about our responsibility as a council and as a city when we install pieces of public art. So I'm sorry, that was a bit roundabout, but I just sort of want to acknowledge how complex and delicate this feels, and that it's prompting for me a desire to really explore how we as a city can hold these conversations in more places than just sort of when it bubbles up to the city council level. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schechter. Councillor Litwin.
Well, I didn't come with any prepared remarks because coming into the meeting I felt quite clear about how I felt. but I want to acknowledge the testimony of everyone this evening, and the one thing that unites all of us in this room at this moment is pain and harm from all sides, from all different perspectives, and I recognize that this is a difficult topic, and that's another reason why we need an office like REIB, to be able to help our community navigate complex conversations like this. I also just want to say many of the folks who spoke tonight came very prepared with incredibly thoughtful remarks that I'm continuing to sit with. Some of those folks are still in the room this evening, and I want to thank you for sticking with it and for putting your heart in, especially the person who spoke about learning their own identity and doing that own work and discovering for herself that it wasn't correct, and how difficult and painful that must be to not only do that process, but also come and speak in front of lots of people and share that personal story. It's a powerful story, and thank you. I think our state has failed us so far in having a really necessary conversation, and I hope our legislators are paying attention. I hope that we can have some sort of reconciliation process, or I don't know what that looks like, but I look to our state leadership for a solution going forward, so that cities and towns can have a sort of an answer to a really difficult question that I think all of us have said tonight we don't feel qualified to respond to. I also can't support bringing any public art, regardless of whose identity it is connected to, into a public space that would cause potentially further harm, because that is not the point of public art in our parks. It is to bring people to unite. Certainly we can have difficult conversations about art pieces, but we saw on Church Street just a decade ago, you know, what that can feel like when people are left out of the conversation. And so tonight, I can't, in good conscience, vote to accept this piece, nor because it has been acknowledged that this would be displayed if we voted to accept it, and that is a deciding factor for me, certainly. And respectfully, and I certainly don't mean to cause any further harm, but I don't believe this statue is really living up to the standard that I would hope for in public art. That and so for those reasons, for those three reasons, I will be voting no tonight. But I ask our state legislature to prioritize this conversation for the next biennium. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Litwin. Is there any other councilor that wishes to get in the queue on this item? Councilor Newbeezer.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to be voting no, and I want to just briefly say, I think maybe sometimes we overcomplicate things on the council. I mean, to my understanding, the only descendant of the person the statue is supposed to honor has said that they find this distasteful. And to me, you know, we honor folks in our community of significance all the time as a council, sometimes through resolutions, sometimes through plaques around the city because of their work or because of their contributions. But in any of those cases, I think, you know, for folks who have done that work on a resolution, et cetera, if any family member said, hey, you know, like, I appreciate it, but this is distasteful, or this, you know, is harmful to my family in some way, we just wouldn't move forward, I think. And so for me, it's kind of as simple as that. And so I'm going to be voting no because, to my understanding, the family doesn't want us to move forward with the statue.
Thank you, Councilor Newbeezer. I do not have any other councilors in the queue on this item. All right. As chair of the council, I can't really weigh in on the substance or the merits, but before going to a vote, I just would like to note something for the record with respect to the process here, and this is a process issue that I've raised both with the administration and the city attorney's office, and that is that, whether you agree with it or not, back in 2022, before nearly all of us joined this council, the council appropriated $50,000 to the Missisquoi Advisory Committee to engage in public education, develop a plan to provide programming regarding Vermont Abenaki history, culture, traditions, and equity struggles for the Burlington public, and to conduct the committee's work, which may include working with the city's departments and staff as it deems appropriate. This item ostensibly is before us because our charter and city rules require that the council to consider a gift. The process point that I want to note is I don't really consider this to be a gift. Generally speaking, if I were to give an artist $50,000 to commission a piece of work and they returned a piece of work, I wouldn't say, oh, thank you for the gift, right? That would be something in exchange for the $50,000 that I provided to that artist. And so I note that because I really don't think that this is a gift in the traditional sense. I think that if for example, the committee were to come back with an educational curriculum or to come back with an event that they wanted to put on for the city, I don't think that those would be viewed as gifts that this council would necessarily have to accept under that charter provision and the rules. So in saying that, and I know that that's subject to different interpretations as well as that of our legal counsel, but I wanted to note that for the record and also note that my vote on this is focused not on the gift nature of it, but on the part of it that would put $25,000 in public art funds to erecting the statue in Battery Park. Is there any other councilor that wishes to be heard on this item? Okay. With Councilor Newbeezer online and anticipating a divided vote, the clerk will please call the roll.
Councilor Barlow?
No.
Councilor Bergman?
No.
Councilor Broderick?
No.
Councilor Carpenter?
Yes.
I'm sorry?
Yes.
Councilor Grant?
No.
Councilor Litwin?
No.
Councilor McKnight?
No.
Councilor Newbeezer?
No.
Councilor Sanchez Parkinson?
No.
Councilor Schachter?
No.
Councilor Singh?
No.
City Council President Travers?
No.
1 aye, 11 nays.
All right, with 1 yes and 11 noes, the motion fails. That takes us now to the next item on our agenda. Item 7.5 was a resolution advancing Indigenous equity, recognition, and community partnership. That was removed from the agenda, which takes us now to item 7.6, a resolution authorizing the production and installation of the Burlington Safety and Security Guide signage in public spaces. And just before turning to that item, I do appreciate everyone who came here this evening for this item, and thank you. All right. I appreciate everyone. Please, if you're leaving, you're certainly welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but if you are leaving now, if you could leave in an orderly fashion so the council can continue its business, that's much appreciated. Councilor Singh, you are the main sponsor of item 7.6 and would turn to you for a motion and introduction of the item.
Yeah, waive the reading and adopt the resolution. Is that
Thank
what
you.
I say?
See that? All right. The motion is to waive the reading and adopt the resolution. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Schachter. Councilor Singh, do you wish for the floor back?
Sure. Thank you very much, Councilor President Travers. Yeah, I've spent a lot of time thinking about this resolution, and I had a couple stories that I wanted to share, but just this weekend, I just wanted to say there was people that have told me, they ran across an incident and they didn't know who to call. They didn't feel like it was an incident that required to call 911, somebody in distress or somebody having a mental health crisis. And, you know, we have given this information to all of our business owners downtown in a different form. And the thought process behind this is, you know, for a long time, I feel like a lot of people in Burlington see things happening in their neighborhoods and, you know, either they don't know what to do, they want to help, or they just say, you know, that's the way it is. And the biggest thing about this is I want to give our citizens the agency to be part of the solution of the ongoing community safety crisis that we face as a city. You know, the work of the fire department, the police department, our street outreach team, you know, we've come up with a robust public safety response for all the type of incidents that we're seeing in the city. And I want everybody, whether they're walking to school or walking downtown and seeing something happening or see somebody in distress, I want them to be able easily to find who they should call and, you know, honor and give us accountability for the infrastructure that we've built for these types of responses in our city. You know, it's been, you know, something too that I often get emails where people are saying they see, you know, drug activity going on near their home, or they see it happening in other parts of the city. I think the drug tip line on here also gives people agency to say to everybody out there that we see this happening and we don't accept that this will happen in our city, and that we're tired of people preying on the vulnerable in our city, whether they're bringing drugs here and trafficking in substances. And I'd like to put them also on notice, you know, that this whole community is watching. This whole community wants to take agency in our response here and throughout the city. And I think this is visitors and citizens alike that do want to feel that they are empowered to be part of the solution. So that's why I'm bringing this forward, and I hope to have support from the council. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. Is there any other councillor that wishes to be recognized on this item? All right, Councillor Grant.
Thank you. I just want to raise concern that when we originally came up with the signage, we had a couple of issues occurring. Number one, we continue to create and expand these teams in order to address a wide variety of community safety issues. We also had, for a period of time, not only a shortage of police officers, we had a very dangerous shortage of dispatchers. And we were also operating under a different police chief. Under our interim chief, Chief Burke, he has worked with a dispatch team that has been rebuilt. He has looked at the incidents, the different types of incidents. He has understood the variety of responses that we have. And dispatchers have been trained, as he has spoken to this committee, spoken to the Public Safety Committee, and spoken publicly about the fact that we have now trained our dispatchers for certain incidents that they don't have to go to sworn officers, but that they can direct to these other responses within our community safety system. So I had just a general concern, while I agree that it's very important to direct as much as we safely can to other community safety resources, that sometimes I'm not sure if someone is a visitor to our community, if they find themselves in a situation, I'm not sure I want them looking at a sign of things that they may not be familiar with because maybe they don't have it in their community. I would prefer that they call 911. And the same for children. Councilor Sanchez-Parkinson and I were having a conversation And I believe we were in agreement that we want children to be following what the school system advises to parents, because quite frankly, I don't think children are going to be paying attention to these signs, and I don't think it's appropriate for us to think they will, because kids are kids. Other than that, it definitely won't hurt. And if we have the hours listed for the different availabilities, and we get more information out there, it won't hurt. But I think if people may not be in a position to measure what type of incident they're having, so we want to be very careful of how we try to advise that on a sign when it may be more appropriate for a dispatcher. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Grant. Is there any other councilor that wishes to be recognized on this item? All right, we'll go to a vote then. Try a voice vote on this item. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are any opposed? That carries unanimously. Thank you, Councilor Singh. The next item on our agenda is item 7.7, Ordinance Housing Inspection Required BCO Chapter 18, Article 2, Section 16. Councilor Bergman, could I turn to you as chair of the Ordinance Committee, and then we'd be happy to turn to Councilor Broderick, who I know had initiated the resolution that at least in part led to this. But Councilor Bergman, would love to turn to you for a motion.
Yep, I'd like to move to waive the second reading of this ordinance and have it adopted, and after Councilor Broderick get the floor back.
Great. Councilor Broderick, would you like the floor on this item first? Oh, right. Thank you, Councilor Bergman.
I'd second it.
All right, Councilor Broderick seconded.
But I would happily, I would let Councilor Bergman go first because I'm not on the ordinance committee. And I think Councilor Bergman being on it should talk about it.
Would you like the floor on this item, though, Councilor Broderick?
I would.
Okay, so we'll go Councilor Bergman and then Councilor Broderick.
Thank you. This is very simple, and it was supported unanimously by the Ordinance Committee. The changes are simply to make it very clear that the certification that allows the university and the college to avoid being part of our registration and inspection system has to be done in writing in the form prescribed by the DPI director by September 1st annually, which is a time that UVM has said they can do, and in the form that they've had ample opportunity, they supported that and have no problem with it. The other thing that was raised in the resolution is that the certification includes an affirmation that students have been notified of their right and the process to make a complaint to the city. And so that is in there. The certification is in the materials. It's posted in the materials. The process is indicated in the memo. And I want to end by saying that I think that this was a very good process that allowed students and the administration and counselors to come together and really begin the process of making sure that the problems that we heard about don't continue. And we'll see whether this is going to be the solution to it or not, because there are structural issues with with university housing that make that difficult, and their choices in terms of their investments difficult. So this may be back to us, and the one thing that we will try to fit in this term as well is the whole question of forced triples, the room size, because getting 3 people in rooms that are designed for 2 people is just a problem. But the way that we define it in our ordinance is not sufficient in my estimation. So we'll take a look at that. We've got a lot in the committee, so the timing of that is uncertain. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Bergman. Councilor Broderick?
Thank you. Yeah. Just very grateful for the ordinance committee and all parties involved, and especially the students who continued to show up, not just to the council meetings preceding the resolution that spawned this, but to the ordinance committees following that. I think this ordinance change and the forms that are provided are a first step, a very good first step in my opinion, and just as importantly, I'd say a message. It's a message to our city's college students that the city of Burlington, that you are indeed residents of Burlington and are entitled to the rights and privileges that come with being in Burlington, and that includes that you deserve you deserve quality housing for the time that you're staying in this city, whether you're here for 4 years or for 40 years. And building off of that, this is just a first step, of course. I'm excited to see the developments in the ordinance committee regarding what changes that need to be made to our housing code regarding things like habitable space, enforced triples, and I hope that the ordinance committee does not shy away from continuing to investigate that, even as we receive reports of enrollment dropping, so there may be less complaints about forced triples, but that doesn't mean that the problem still doesn't exist. So stay headstrong with that. It's very appreciated. And then also, in the sense that this is a first step, is that just because we've created this process and have now expanded this process, that does not mean that the same problem of accountability can still show up again if we are not vigilant on the side of the city to make sure that our ordinances are being followed in the future, and then as well on the side of tenants, that we continue to report when we feel like our housing is not in the condition that we deserve, and then it is not in the condition that our laws say it should be. And that's part of this education tool. And just very grateful that we've gotten to this first step and excited to see what the ordinance committee can accomplish in the future. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Broderick. Is there any other councilor? Yep, Councilor Litwin.
Thanks. I did want to speak on this as one of the folks who co-sponsored this with Councilor Broderick. It feels like a long time ago, and I'm very glad and thankful for the Ordinance Committee for holding what I heard were very reasonable and professional meetings between the students and UVM and other interested parties. I would be remiss in pointing out that could have happened on the Hill with the administration instead of sort of waiting for the city to have that conversation, but I'm looking forward to this change. I can't help but point out the irony and irritation I have right now and I don't know where this is at in the legislative process in committee, but that there was a request from UVM for $15 million to build a new basketball facility, when it's very clear to me that some of those dorms have had a lot of deferred maintenance. We talk about deferred maintenance a lot at the city. And it's my understanding that the Senate agreed to like 12 million, and that we need to, I don't know where it's landed. It's the crazy end of the year right now for our senators and legislators in general. But I think Burlingtonians deserve to know that because we are dealing with a lot in this community around housing crunch and around not having enough housing for everybody, including the students who choose to make Burlington home. And forced triples and whatever else have you, as we've heard. And I just don't see that facility as being more important of a priority than maintaining and updating some of the dormitories we saw photos of And so I just ask that maybe if anybody's paying attention out there, that we really think about that, because I don't think we need to prioritize that over the repairs that need to be made. Maybe if they agree to make the repairs out of the $800+ million endowment, maybe we could revisit the basketball court. In the meantime, I'm thankful for Councilor Broderick and the students for bringing this forward. It was shocking to me to see the response I got to my questions. So I'm very grateful that there was an ordinance process and that we were able to reaffirm that this city never, as Director Ward said himself, ceded the right to hold, to investigate complaints around housing code violation in our dormitories. So thank you for bringing it forward, and this is hopefully a living, breathing document as well, so if we need to revisit it, I think as Councilor Bergman was maybe insinuating, I'm not sure, we should revisit it if the process doesn't work. September 1st seems like an odd deadline because it's their busiest time of year, but we'll see. All right, thank you for the time.
Thank you, Councilor Litwin. Is there any other councilor that wishes to be recognized on this item? All right, we'll go to a vote then. Try a voice vote on this item as well. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are any opposed? That carries unanimously. We'll now turn to item 7.8, an ordinance regarding consumer protection, BCO Chapter 21, Article 1. And I think we'll do the same thing on this item, where Councilor Bergman would appreciate you as chair of the ordinance committee introducing the item, and then Councilor Litwin, if you want the floor after that. No? Okay, so we'll just go to you, Councilor Bergman.
Thanks. I'd like to move to waive the second reading and adopt the ordinance, and after a second, and if Councilor Litwin wants to speak after him, have the floor back.
I'll second.
Thank you. Councilor Bergman?
So we went through it last week. I don't think we have to beat that dead horse, but it seems like this is a major step forward in consumer protection, and if the indication of the busyness that I saw when I dropped off a 4-year-old at at Cinderella at the Flynn on Saturday night is any indication, this will be greatly appreciated by people who are coming to the city to park and also to buy gas. So I look forward to this being effective. And yes, this was my granddaughter who went with mom and grandma to Cinderella, and downtown was absolutely packed.
Thank you, Councilor Bergman. Does anyone else wish to be recognized on this item? All right, we'll go to a vote then here. Oh, Councilor Singh, sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to say thank you for Councilor Litwin and the Ordinance Committee on this. I think it's a really important consumer protection, particularly the handicap parking in these private lots where I know people have been ticketed who, need those spaces to, navigate our downtown. So I really appreciate, there's a lot of gratitude from myself. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Singh. Anyone else? All right, we'll go to a vote then on this item. Oh, okay. Turn my head and I don't see it. Okay, Councilor Broderick, go ahead.
Thank you. And yeah, reiterating thank you to the Ordinance Committee and Councilor Litwin for bringing the issue to us and then bringing this forward and revealing to me an authority that the city has that I didn't know about consumer protection. So if anybody in the community has other practices by commerce in our city that they believe is unfair, do not hesitate to bring it to us, because I think this is a very useful section that is now another living document that I hope that we could add to if folks in the community have other suggestions. So again, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Unless someone stops me, I think we're going to go to a vote now. So all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are any opposed? That carries unanimously. So we now turn to the last item on our deliberative agenda. It is not an action item, but it is an important informational item. It's regarding the FY27 General Fund Budget Overview of the Mayor's budget to the City Council. And Mayor and CAO Shad, we'll turn the floor to you.
Great, thank you, President Travers. So as the CEO brings up the slides, I would like to just acknowledge that while this is earlier than usual, we are presenting the mayor's fiscal year 27 budget to the council to formally hand off this part of our process per the charter to the council to start your formal deliberations looking at the recommended budget from my administration for next year. This has been another hard budget cycle. This is one that we started earlier than normal to also be transparent not only with city councilors, we've been engaging you since January, but to engage even our city employees and the public earlier and more frequently, and as we are developing this budget, starting with a very big problem statement, which is a continued structural budget challenge that's within the city's operating budget for the general fund. This year estimated at between $10 to $12 million. It ended up being right in the middle there, around $11 million. That is a very sizable challenge when it is the third year in a row, given the way that the city government has grown in its cost obligations, both to city staff, but also to continuing programs that we didn't necessarily look at with enough scrutiny to understand what is essential and core to the city and what were things that we needed to right-size to make sure we were building an affordable and a sustainable budget. So I'm incredibly proud to present you this budget. We've done so in good faith and partnership with all of you to include you early and for us to consider your early feedback on what were the priorities of the city. I'm proud that this budget includes a lot of key investments, because budget should be a reflection of the values of a community, and as much as what we need to invest in, as much as what we need to perhaps pare back to make it sustainable. And so you'll see investments along the lines of community safety, strategic housing that we need to do, climate, but also some pieces that we have long deferred, including investments in our fleet, which are the city vehicles, largely around community safety. These are things that CEO Shad will go over in a minute. And as I wrap up, I understand that any tax increase is an affordability question for folks, especially folks who are low and moderately income. I am proud to say with 70% of the vote from voters, we are proposing using the full 5 cents that those voters authorized on the police and fire splinter tax to very strategically make those investments I mentioned before on community safety. So this budget is balanced, it is fair, and it provides several solutions for not only closing that $11 million budget gap, but moving us forward as a city where each year in the outer years now, we will continue to close this gap, because now we have found solutions that put us on a more sustainable path forward. So with that, the CAO will go into the details, and then we will both happily take questions. And she missed it. She said she heard it in the break room when she was having her late dinner, but this woman has put a tremendous amount of work into this budget. So I hope you will see the tremendous amount of work that she led all the departments on to put forward such an important budget this year. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you, Mayor. And thanks, everyone, for sticking with us late in the evening, and you've saved the best for last. All right. Tonight, here is our agenda for the general fund budget update. We'll talk about the priorities and pressures of this budget. Then we'll go through the assumptions we made on both the revenue and expense side. We'll talk about the solutions employed in this budget, the effects on the municipal tax, and then the highlights of the investments in this budget. And then we'll head into discussion. The priorities in building this budget look a lot like last year's priorities, and that's because the core priorities for the administration have not changed, and those are affordability, equity, and sustainability. And then one of the things we added this year was recognizing our city commitments to both residents and employees. And that comes after a very difficult budget year last year and building on some of our lessons learned. And you can see that we have demonstrated a balanced approach to structuring the budget by focusing on our core and essential services, by modestly raising property taxes, by eliminating vacant positions within the city, but not eliminating anyone who is in a current job, and then maintaining the city's gross receipts rate where it is. And we'll talk more about all of those. Some of the budget pressures, and the mayor talked a little bit about these. The city budget is historically built on an assumption of 3% per year growth on personnel costs. And if you have been a careful listener, you have noticed that those have been growing at more than 3% per year. Also, health insurance costs, not only at the city, but all over the state and country, have been going up at a crazy rate. And since 2017, those have nearly doubled. As I mentioned, the cost of living adjustments in recent years have been driving up personnel costs. And then our grand list, which is all of the property in the city that pays property taxes, is only growing at 1% per year. And that accounts for just over half of all of our revenues. So you can see right off the bat that if that's growing at 1% per year and we've got personnel costs growing at least 3% per year, that's already causing some strain on the budget. Some of the other budget pressures are other revenue sources like gross receipts and local option tax. Are also subject to economic headwinds. We are currently bargaining with the city's largest union, so we don't know the exact cost of living adjustment for next year. And of course, we are continuing to live with uncertainty regarding Canadian tourism and the future of federal grants, which also play into our budget. Diving into some of the revenue assumptions, you'll see here we're focusing on what we call the Big Five, and those account for 70% of all general fund revenue. Property tax, as we just talked about, makes up just over half of all of the general fund revenue. We are planning to utilize the full 5 cents of increased police and fire tax as approved by voters. And then this next one is what we call a property tax equivalent. It's also called pilot, payment in lieu of taxes. And these are with various organizations that don't have to pay us property taxes. A good example is UVM, but there's many others. And as you can see, that comes in at about 8% of our revenue. And then we have gross receipts, local option tax, and franchise fees. For the sake of time, I won't go into all of them. You can see the details on the right. I will note that all of these are additional percentages that are added on to expenses that you may already pay. For example, gross receipts. That would be something you may go to a coffee shop or a restaurant and purchase something, and then you would see a 2.5% charge on the bottom of that receipt, and that would flow through directly to the city. On the expense side, you can see here, we are proud that this budget retains all current regular employees. We've mentioned that we cut some vacant positions, but no currently employed city employees. We have also included the cost of living adjustments for fire at 7% and police at 4.75%. And we have put in reasonable estimates for both AFSCME and non-union employees. And as has been our practice, we have put in the same percentage for non-union employees that we have for AFSCME. And all departments have done a very good job of trimming their operational budgets, meaning anything that isn't personnel, such as consulting, travel and training, any of those that we might think of as discretionary expenses. We have really, under the mayor's guidance, really asked for each department head to trim as much as they can while maintaining core and essential functions. So now let's turn to the solutions. There were 3: raising revenue, realizing strategic opportunities, and right-sizing government. Starting with raising revenues, we've already talked about raising the property tax, and that has brought in about $3 million. We have also talked here and at the Board of Finance about enhancing our ability to collect on money already owed to the city. So we won't spend much time talking about that here. You can see on the right, this comes from several different areas. Again, all money that's already overdue to the city. And then we have been reducing our reliance on one-time sources of revenue ever since COVID, and it's down to just about $1 million, and you can see the sources on the right. We are continuing to try to grow the pie of sources of revenue, and you can see here that includes looking at the sale of city property. That would not only bring in one-time money, but that would move that property from being on the city books to somewhere where that would be bringing in annual property tax revenue. So stay tuned for more information on those properties. And then lastly, the solution of right-sizing government. We've talked a little bit about this one at the top, which has also been called vacancy savings or expenditure control. We did some analysis and realized this is a solution that in various forms the city has been employing since FY14. And so this year, we did an analysis over the past 10 years to come up with this amount. We have also created a voluntary furlough program, and we are only budgeting about $200,000 of savings because while we have some survey results from our employees indicating that this is something that they would like to take advantage of, we don't know exactly how that will pan out. And we're working closely with our HR department to make sure that this is something that is operationally feasible. It's not something that will be eligible for fire and police. But for our other departments, it's something that will have to be worked out with department heads so that it does not create any additional burden on departments, and will have to be approved just like any other paid time off would be, although this is unpaid time off. And then lastly, and we'll talk more about this on some of the forthcoming slides, we asked each department to reduce expenses as much as they could. Those who are providing essential and core services are not able to reduce as much as those who don't. So we'll take a look at that. When we asked departments to look at reducing expenses, some of the considerations are which departments were impacted over the last couple of years, and then which services are both essential and which are core. And you can see on this slide how we define those. The administration, we worked with each of the department heads and department staff in coming up with those definitions and then working with departments on services that could be cut. You can see here that resulted in a total of 27 general fund positions that were affected in some way, saving just over $2 million. 24 of those positions were currently vacant. 2 were recycled truck drivers, and this body had previously voted to move recycling to an outside contractor. So those people are eligible to transfer to other positions in the city. And then the last position is one that is moving from full-time to part-time. Here's another way to look at those 27 general fund positions, looking at the top by their union affiliation, and then at the bottom, there were 13 positions that were completely eliminated, 13 that are going to be held open for this year, and then 1 that again went from full-time to part-time. I mentioned that we applied some lessons from last year, and those include by eliminating vacant positions instead of filled positions. Also, every department that lost a position or is leaving one open completed a memo ahead of time outlining which tasks would be ending with the position and which tasks would be moving to other positions to help ease that transition. We realized that work was not always done ahead of time last year, and that created some confusion both for the public and employees. So that was something that was really important for us to get right, and that was, all of that information has been shared.
Catherine, can you go back 2 slides now? Sorry. I just want to emphasize on this particular slide, you'll see BFFA represents the Firefighters Association, and you don't see BPOA up there, but SBPOA is the new Sergeants Bargaining Unit. And I just want to, because I just said earlier how we're investing in community safety. We work with our unions, which we very much appreciate, throughout this entire budgeting process. And through an agreement, because we are adding 2 new firefighters by the end of the fiscal year, we agreed to hold open anticipated vacancies in firefighter positions and those 2 brand new positions until later in the fiscal year to bring on new recruits all at once for the efficiency of doing 1 recruiting class for training purposes next spring. That is a cost savings we can be strategic about. And then on the sergeant, and then in one of the non-union positions is a lieutenant position within the Burlington Police Department. The reason we can hold open those anticipated vacancies for leadership roles in the police department is because, unfortunately, at this moment, our rank and file officer numbers are so low, the ratios don't require us necessarily to have those management positions filled quite yet. This budget does, though, include, and I'm sorry if you're going to, well, it's worth repeating later on, 10 new police officer positions. So if we can recruit, we are doing lots of different strategies you've heard us report on before. We will then, by the end of the year, this is why we're not eliminating these management positions, we will then work towards filling those supervisor positions, because then the ratios will make sense. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, let's talk about the effects this budget will have on the municipal tax. And you can see that here. This shows what the tax rate, and this is only on the city side, remembering that your tax bill is 2/3 the education side and 1/3 the municipal side. Last year, we were able to keep the tax increase down very low, and this year we are planning to take that 5-cent police and fire tax increase. And so you'll see the average annual increase is $191, and that is on a property valued at $353,000, and that is the current median assessed value. So half the people will pay more than that, and half will pay less. And now let's talk about a little of the fun things, the investments in this year's budget. I'm glad the mayor mentioned the 10 new police officers, because that's not actually on this slide, and that's really important. But we will also be adding 2 new firefighters, some capital improvements to the police station, also not on here, are improvements to the locker rooms. What is on here is the HVAC. Both of those are really important. And then something we have talked about previously is, in my entire time here, we have not been replacing fleet in the general fund. And so something I'm very proud of in this budget is that we are starting to do that. And frankly, we are just able to replace the items that are on the dire must-replace list. But that is real progress, and the police department is so excited for their 5 police cruisers, and we really need that ambulance. And also, I think it is important to note here that we do think of public safety as police and fire, but as Director Spencer likes to remind us, without the snow plow or the sidewalk tractor in the winter, the police and the ambulance would not be able to get to us. So those are really important as well. And then a lot of interesting and important investments in revitalizing Burlington, summer concert nights at Waterfront Park, which is where we all wish we were tonight instead of in here. Coming up soon, events to celebrate the World Cup. Last year, we had winter lights in Burlington, and this year BCA will be expanding that to something called Illuminate Burlington. We'll be replacing playground equipment. You have heard about some of the exciting housing initiatives, and also Plan BTV 2050 has kicked off. So there are a lot of exciting things in this budget, and while I especially talk about the gaps and how much we have to cut, it is important for us to celebrate the good and exciting work that is in this budget. So with that, we are presenting our balanced and responsible budget that sustains the core city services, that strategically reduces our operating expenses and gets us closer to a sustainable budget in the future. And I will turn it over to you, Mayor, in case there's anything else, and then we'll open it up to questions.
We're ready for questions. Well done, Catherine. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any councilors that wish to get in the queue for questions or comments? Councilor Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine, for all your hard work on this. I know you spend a lot of time this time of year preparing these budgets. I think it's important for the public to see, they're seeing a 6.3% increase in the municipal tax rate, but yet the budget shows an increase of expenses of 1.7%. I understand the derivation of that is all the various splinter taxes on top of that. I think it would be helpful in these presentations for the public that we also detail that as part of what's going on with the municipal tax rate. Because it's easy to look at that spreadsheet and, well, not easy, but just to say, hey, 1.7%, why are my taxes going up 6.3%? And I think it's really important for the public to see all those other splinter taxes.
Thank you, Councilor Singh. Councilor Sanchez-Parkinson, and then Councilor McKnight.
I just first want to thank you, and as a new councilor, it has been like, I want to say a treat, but it's been fun and interesting and very, very informative to go through this process so early on, so thank you. I have some questions and thoughts. One is a minor question. You mentioned the grand list growing slower. I think, I don't know if you used the word slow, but at 1%. I wonder if that's usual, of what are we aiming towards, or just to kind of have a sense of where that lands.
Well, we can get back to you on a few more details, but this has been a trend for 15 plus years in Burlington, and there's a few general reasons. The city, and no one thing is the reason, but overall, the taxable parcels in Burlington are there's only about 40% that are taxable parcels. 60% are not taxable because of the sizable amount of land that UVM and UVM Medical Center, the city itself, faith groups, nonprofits, et cetera. So when you think about the feasible universe that you can even tax from, it's actually pretty small considering the size of Burlington. Then you add other policy decisions that have been made by this city over the years around the use of TIF districts, which takes offline both state revenue but also local revenue for a series of years, usually upwards to 20 years, in order to siphon that off to support infrastructure upgrades. And we heard earlier about the Waterfront TIF, for example. So that means that those parcels that would have been taxed and that money flowing earlier, that money is being used for a different purpose. It's a policy decision that's used. The city still benefits, but if you're looking for ongoing routine operating money coming in the door quickly, that goes offline as well for a sizable number of years. In general, though, unlike South Burlington, we also have not had until recently, with the neighborhood code being passed just prior to my time as mayor, strategies that have actually helped us infill strategically, and then until even more recently, an implementation plan of neighborhood code that would actually help accelerate and democratize how we add more taxable property onto the city's grand list. And by doing those kinds of proactive policies, we can start to accelerate or at least increase beyond this kind of creep of about 1% or so on the grand list. So there's a few different unique reasons that, given the unique nature of Burlington policy decisions, as well as just the feasibility. Now, everyone will always jump to the fact that just ask those people who don't have to be taxed to just give some money. Anything we do there is voluntary given state law. Even as you all know, with UVM, while there is a statutory requirement that they give us a minimum of $750,000, that has remained static for many years, right? Yes, many years. And then beyond that, the city several years ago started to negotiate a voluntary fee for service on top of that. So it's always a push and pull. It's a negotiation. It's a relationship building activity. It is not simply just make them pay more. And many of these are nonprofits that are also living in these economic times as well.
Yeah. In the time that I have,
I'm so sorry I took so much of your time. Usually, Councilor Travers pauses the timer.
I'll just build on that
sorry.
real quickly. Since you mentioned UVM, it was mentioned that one of the challenges or the pressures that we're experiencing is federal grants, and I think there was another one, and I'm forgetting. I just, as someone who's embedded in higher education, enrollment is going down just across all of our universities and colleges, and so the first thing that came to mind was UVM specifically is seeing a 7% decrease in the enrollment. Champlain has seen like 30% in the last few years, and so I'm just thinking about how that's impacting gross receipts or any other economic sort of movement within our, both within our city, but then related to potential agreements. So that's just a thought that came to mind.
Thank you, Councilor. And I will just say, Dr. Tromp, the new president of UVM, has been very forthright with what was just reported in now a trend seeing in the next class for UVM, a downward movement of the enrollment numbers. And that is something larger than UVM, larger than Vermont. It is a demographic cliff, or whatever the word is that they're using, for just the nature of the impacts of our economy and decision-making that young people are making around, do they go to college? Can they afford to go to college? Can they afford to stay in college? So much like a lot of the other economic challenges facing Burlington, it's much larger than something UVM can control, or the city or the state for that matter. But we have to adapt, and one of the things Dr. Tromp has been very clear about, and I've been clear about, is our success is intertwined. So we need to figure out new ways to pivot in our relationship in order to add to the vitality of this community so that students who are able to come to college pick Burlington, and that we really view leveraging our different assets and our responsibilities for Burlington, and that we look at that together collectively. And I think she and I are modeling a new way of doing that, and I hope that really not only pays off for UVM's enrollment, but also for Burlington as a true partner in the success of the university as well as the success of the city.
And sorry, Councilor Sanchez-Parkinson, if you have a couple other comments, just to clarify what my practice generally is that if a councilor proactively asks the administration a question, then the timer keeps running just as any other witness who's here. If the administration wants to proactively respond to a councilor without their prompt, then I do pause the timer, because I think it's important that we hear from the administration, but for that to not count against a councilor's time. But I recognize that you may have not been aware of that practice, and so if you have any closing remarks, we'll be happy to allow you to continue.
I'll just make one other comment, that I do feel that this time around, it seems like employees have been notified, they've been part of the process, which I think has been helpful. One thing that stood out to me is pulling back on travel and training, which again, feels very understandable. It just made me think of like, how are we also, yes, pulling back on some of the resources, but still ensuring that our employees feel that they are being valued and seen, and maybe thinking of other ways to elevating their value. And so potentially even thinking of like, what's the investment that we're gonna be doing towards them? It could be even pulling what's already been done. It made me think about the RAB survey that's gonna be done, like that's directly gonna benefit employees. And so there are investments, I think, that are happening and sort of elevating those so that people in our city, like that are working in our city, feel seen and valued.
Thank you, Councilor Sanchez-Parkinson. I next have up Councilor McKnight and then Councilor Carpenter.
Great. Thank you. And thank you, Catherine, for walking us through this. I shared some of Councilor Buscher's concerns about particularly the library cuts. So I was curious to hear more about that. And then also, you know, we have the highlights laid out, which I really I appreciate. I think it's important for folks to know the investments, and a lot of this stuff is really exciting and impressive. But what is missing for me here is sort of an explanation of what the low lights are, if you will. Like, what are the hard parts of this budget? What impacts are the cuts having? And I know, you know, we all have the benefit of the departmental budget presentations, which I have reviewed, but for the benefit of the public who might be turning in here, I just wonder if you could speak to a few of those. And in addition to the changes that are mentioned at the library, are there any other kind of public-facing negative impacts from this budget that folks should be aware of, other than, of course, a tax increase, which is significant as well?
Thank you. So to the first, the library was actually the least impacted department percentage-wise, and the reduction in the youth librarian line was actually an idea proposed by that position, person who holds that position, working through with the union, and then bringing that to management as a proposal. And the library has adapted a few other people who also hold youth programming in general, and that is something that Mary Danko has provided some context with, which was included in the budget cut memos that we provided to the full council. We did provide that to the full council, correct? So a few weeks ago, or at least a couple weeks ago, we provided to every councilor a budget impact memo for each of those reductions by department that itemizes what you're asking for, councilor. And for the sake of the public, I've given several examples at press conferences, but just for tonight's purposes, DPW and BCA took more significant cuts proportionally than other departments for the general fund, especially compared to last year. So for DPW, for example, recycling was a big impact of moving the municipally controlled pickup to a private contractor in January. We also held open positions related to in the traffic division for, I mentioned before, for Burlington Police Department, they're holding open a couple of management positions because we don't have the staff to manage yet in terms of the rank and file officers. In the clerk treasurer's office, we will be closing for half an hour because we reduced a position at the clerk's window for between 1 and 1:30, so union staff breaks can be taken. Let's see, we are making some changes within IT in terms of will impact. A lot of this is going to impact mostly if you're really, really paying attention or you're frankly a city employee. For an IT purposes, for example, we reduced a position there, but it's going to cause slightly longer wait times. We mentioned this in the budget hearing. For example, Scott Barker mentioned this, our CIO, which is really for an employee. If you have an emergency, your computer is totally dead, that's an emergency. But if it's something that can wait, it's going to lengthen the wait time for employee responses. So those are a few examples. I just, again, refer counselors, I'm sorry, I'm eating up your time, counselors, to those memos for more details. And to the budget hearings, we also presented the impacts of that by department for the public.
Set, Councilor McKnight. Thank you. Councilor Carpenter.
Thanks. I don't want to repeat. I just appreciate Councilor Singh's request for somewhere getting the information on all of those splinter taxes, and not this minute, but I think combining that with what the school tax is, so at the end of the day, the citizens can get kind of a full picture. The other thing I was going to mention, which the mayor mentioned, was adding our new zoning and the community codes. One of our problems with the grand list not growing is we're not growing. And so however we can figure out to get more people into the city is a good thing. So, and that's not, I mean, you have to match the housing with the people, but we need a better strategy about how do we get more people to live here.
Thank you, Councilor Carpenter. Is there any other councilor that wishes to be heard? Yes, Councilor Grant.
Thank you. A few things I want to say that I really appreciate the process, continuing to push discussing the budget even earlier, continuing to take input from employees, continuing to think about everyone in our city that needs to contribute to helping to balance this budget while not putting strain, like not putting all the strain on our property taxpayers, not putting all the strain on our renters, not putting all the strain on our businesses, not putting all the strain on our employees, but having to share the pain, so to speak. I appreciated all the extra meetings, the opportunities to receive information. I appreciated, again, the detailed budget presentations made by the department heads. And I also appreciated the fact that we not only got their presentations, but not only for counselors, but members of the public can actually see the line by line budgets that are available on the city's website. I think that's very important. And I will leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Grant. Is there any other councilor with comments or questions? Councilor Litwin.
Thanks very much. And it's always fun when we can talk about the budget at 10 p.m. On a tough night. I think we had a difficult night, but thank you for the presentation. I'll kind of keep, I think we have a lot still to talk about and digest, and I look forward to getting the full sort of package, so to speak. A couple sort of flags I have that I'll want to, maybe you can address, Catherine, or the mayor. You know, I'm a little worried about where this puts us for FY 28 and 29, particularly with regards to the cost-saving strategies with police and fire. So I've met with Chief Curtin. You know, he helped me make sense of why it makes sense, which was really helpful for me. But I guess where does this put us for FY 28 when we have to, or later in FY 27 when we have to fill those positions or we need to grow because of the call rates, when we're drawing down the full 5 cents? You know, are we, for the public safety tax, are we going to be having to go back and knock on people's doors again about that? That's one question I have. And then probably the second I have is, you know, where we go from here again with FY 28 with regard to staffing, because the roles that were cut were all roles that were vacant for pretty much for the most part. And so when we're strategically right-sizing government, it makes me question, like, are we doing that if we're only cutting vacant positions? Some vacant positions maybe needed to be kept. Other positions that are filled maybe need to be let go of until maybe another day when we're in a better fiscal situation. So I guess that's where I'm at right now. Please feel free to respond. I'm also, hopefully we'll continue dialogue and diving into the numbers together over the next month or so. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. I will say that, first of all, you've heard me all report on this before, including the CAO, is that we added 100 positions over about a 10-year period before I became mayor. And as I said publicly multiple times over, some of those were incredibly important. There was additional CSOs, additional CSLs, for example, that are added that are important positions to meet the needs and complexities of our time. However, when you keep adding more positions, things start to add up, the doubling of healthcare costs, et cetera, to make sure you continue to fund those positions. I have shown that we have done multiple ways of reducing the headcount strategically, both in a painful but courageous way last year in last year's budget. I take it very seriously when considering cutting positions that are filled, because there are humans involved in that, and I got a lot of feedback from this body at that time. So I caution us around when we talk about reduction in force and how it might seem easier to reduce vacant positions because there's not humans involved. To go deeper than that would absolutely impact filled positions this round. So I caution that is a painful process. The way that we went about it this cycle was trying to be very thoughtful about positions that are open, and a handful of positions we can get you the numbers of that we've been holding open in certain departments because we wanted to fill it, but it was been hard to fill. For example, there is a chronic one in the traffic division. Is that the right division in DPW? I believe so. It's a division.
Parking and traffic, yes.
Parking and traffic. Anyway, it's been chronically hard to fill. So we had a reckoning, if you will, that seems like a strong word, with Director Chapin to say this is not likely to fill. We've been having to repost it multiple times. Let's just eliminate it at this point and try to reshuffle and understand the impacts of that decision. So we have been doing assessments deeply with each department head, asking them to really consider, is that needed? Another one is holding a CSO position open in the Burlington Police Department. Similar logic. It's been hard for the entire time I've been mayor to get up fully to 11. The chief has said we need 10 matches the shift schedules, so we can go with another year of keeping that CSO position open. In terms of fiscal year 28 and 29, I'll take that as a sort of a two-part piece. One is how do we continue to make sure we are closing the budget gap? And we did a presentation to Board of Finance in March that I will just point you towards, where Nancy Stetson, our data analyst, senior data analyst, was able to work with our team of doing projections going forward about when will we actually close this and what assumptions need to work for that to happen. And we were able to present that to folks around a few different assumptions around continuing to be diligent with our expenses, but also strategically growing the revenue, was growing the pot with the work I mentioned before on gross receipts, but it's also realizing these additional opportunities. The city sits on several parcels of land. How do we strategically leverage a small strategic number of them for better and higher purposes and uses, including building more housing, literally, which we would either continue to own and benefit from the rent and the ongoing revenue there, or selling if that's not an optimal piece of property for the city. But that's around getting much more creative with leveraging our current assets to raise revenue to get us through this next stretch to a place where our grand list is actually not only producing a higher yield, but also these TIF districts start coming offline, meaning that the revenue starts to flow in the door. So there's a few different answers to that, but I would point you back to the March. I don't know what date it is, but it was in March. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. You all set, Councilor Litwin? Okay. Is there any other councilor that wishes to be recognized? All right. We'll very much appreciate the presentation this evening. No, it's an ongoing discussion, so we'll look forward to continuing that at our meetings to come. That is the end of our deliberative agenda. I know some of my colleagues were skeptical about our completing it by 10:30. It's only 10:11, so that gives us time for our committee reports. Is there any councilor with a committee report? Councilor Bergman.
The Ordinance Committee is meeting on the 21st at 4:30. We'll be taking up the gross receipts tax and bicycles, and I think that part of the bicycle conversation is another piece that relates to motorbikes or motorcycles or motorized vehicles on the bike path. So we're engaged with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Bergman. Is there any other councilor with a committee report? We'll go Councilor Singh, and then Barlow, and then Litwin.
Yep, the Public Safety Committee will meet on the fourth Thursday of the month, the 28th at 5:30, and that's our standing meeting time unless it's dictated otherwise by holidays. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Singh. Councilor Barlow?
The Transportation, Energy, and Utilities Committee will be meeting on our standard meeting day and time, which is the fourth Tuesday of the month at 5:30, and we're going to be meeting at 645 Pine Street.
Thank you. Councilor Litwin.
Well, I'm excited to say CD&R has an update. Well, If you're looking for something to do this Wednesday evening, we have a few things on the agenda, and we're looking forward to welcoming Councilor Sanchez Parkinson to her first CD&R meeting. We'll be talking about, with the Burlington Walk Bike Council, which we hope to bring back to the council relatively soon, about their ideas that they have for some community block parties. Very exciting. And Graffiti Abatement Committee, which we all referred back to the council back in, I think, March, or maybe it was April, I don't remember anymore. We're going to be taking that up and starting to have the initial conversations about what does that look like. So if you have, I know there's lots of folks who come here and talk about art and graffiti and or defacement and everything in between. So feel free to join us. We're going to try and pick back up this syringe litter recommendations. Obviously, that has changed with the announcement that from the Howard Center that they will be not pursuing funding anymore for the Clark Street location, I think effective this June or the end of this fiscal year. So we need to think about, what that means, what's necessary, and revisit that. And then I will just say we can't fit all this fun into one meeting, although we do try. So I think in June and we hope that this is helpful to the mayor's office as well, we'll pick back up sort of I hate calling it regional programs budget, but that's what it was called. The artist formerly known as regional programs. And I know there are folks, including those in this room, who have great interest in us taking that back up, and we look forward to it. But I think I want to thank the administration, who is going through staffing transition right around the time that we started the conversation. So we're looking forward to welcoming, hopefully, Lisa Gerlach will join us in June, or someone from the mayor's office, and we'll have a better picture of the budget by then as well. So I think it makes sense. All right, thanks so much.
Thank you, Councilor Litwin. Is there any, and I will note, by the way, that we're also expecting the Walk Bike Council to present to the full council at our meeting on June 1st. They have other items, but I will just note for you that they did indicate that they may be able to speak to the block party designation proposal there too, so would just encourage you to coordinate with them knowing that they're going to be here on June 1st. Yes, Councilor Sanchez Parkinson.
The REIB committee is meeting tomorrow, and we will be discussing our priorities for the year. So if you have thoughts on what our committee should be thinking about, feel free to send me a note. I am also hoping to start refreshments at committees because I'm always hungry during the evening. So feel free to stop by and grab a bite.
Thank you. We should do that. Yes. Council initiative funds. Yes, yes. Mm-hmm. Is there any other councilor with a committee report? All right. That takes us now to City Council General City Affairs. Is there any councilor that wishes to be recognized on this item? Okay. Councilor Grant?
Thank you. We are bringing back the one community clean-out event that we had a couple of years ago, and over the years has been occurring in and around the Old North End and downtown area. We will be having dumpsters set up at the Sustainability Academy and Integrated Arts Academy. And we put out a front porch forum. We've got an Instagram post. We are going to be looking for volunteers to help out. And the whole idea is for people to be able to get rid of things that don't go into blue bins or go into their garbage, other than we can't take large appliances. But in 2024, we came close to collecting close to 5 tons of garbage. And anyway, it's a great opportunity for all the residents, including students who also participated in helping to come to these 2 locations. And this also will include scrap metal and tires. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Grant. Is there any other councilor on General City Affairs? Councilor McKnight.
I just wanted to give a brief shout out to the Champlain Sailing Center. I had the great pleasure of chaperoning a 5th grade field trip there this morning with my son and all of his 5th grade colleagues. And it's just such a wonderful resource for the city. You know, there are lots of kids in our city who don't have the chance to get out on the lake, and that program makes it so much more accessible. And the education, both the sailing education and then some sort of environmental protection education around keeping the lake clean and keeping water clean, which is very interactive. I learned a lot, the kids learned a lot, and the education director told me that for the next, I think, about 3 weeks, they have a group of elementary school kids coming in every single day to have this same experience. So it's hard work that they're doing down there, and it's also really important. So thanks, and go support them if you are able.
Thank you very much, Councilor McKnight. Is there any other councilor on general city affairs? Councilor Litwin.
Yeah, one thing that I do want to bring up, really for the benefit of my colleagues here at the table, primarily, is that, and this was just not something that I was familiar with, but apparently I found it in a legal notice, which is that the railroad comes through and notifies in the newspaper of pesticide deployment that they're going to be doing along the railroad tracks. And, you know, I've been asking questions of like, what are the risks? Because I'm thinking a lot about the fact that our largest encampments are along the railroad tracks. So people's belongings, human beings, pets, is it, if they're walking through the tracks, is it going to be, you know, an issue, right? So, so I know that Director Ward, who I only emailed today, is one of the people on the notification list, but I'm still waiting for responses from the state on like what exactly are those risks. But I think we should all be asking those questions and just making sure that that we're doing our part as a city to just let folks know who are living down there, or if there's anyone who happens to be right along the railroad track. I don't know if there are any houses right along the railroad track, but it looked like it was a pretty gnarly list of pesticides. So I wanted to flag it for all of us to pay attention to. Whether you agree with it or not, folks are living down there, and we want to make sure that people are safe and not inadvertently exposed to toxic chemicals without their knowledge.
Thank you, Councilor Litwin. Anyone else on general city affairs? Okay. Then the last item that we have is City Council President, council updates. I don't have very much other than to say that we've met back-to-back last Monday and this Monday, because next Monday is Memorial Day, and hope folks have a meaningful Memorial Day weekend. Our next regular meeting will be on June 1st. As a reminder to the council, we do have, the mayor's not here, but I will mention that the city council with mayor presiding is meeting the morning of this Thursday, May 21st at 8:30 for a site visit regarding the Burlington-Winooski Bridge project. And then later that evening at 6 p.m. we'll reconvene a special meeting of the Burlington City Council with mayor presiding to hold the necessity and compensation hearings related to that site visit. I will also note for the public, as well as councilors who are in touch with prospective applicants, that the deadline for applications for our annual board and commission appointment process is this Wednesday. So please encourage folks, including incumbents who I think sometimes miss the memo that their seat is up, to, if they're interested in reapplying, to please get their applications in no later than this Wednesday, May 20th. And we are working with the mayor's office to figure out from there what the appointment process at the council level will be to those boards and commissions. So stand by for additional details there. That's it for me. Absent any objection and seeing no other business before the council, we'll go ahead and adjourn our meeting at 10:22 p.m. Thank you.